Welcome everyone to Skills 2024. This is our largest strategic knowledge and innovation legal summits of skills. We had over 800 participants, registered attendees. First, we want to ask you to rename yourself, including the following convention: your name, your firm, your title, your pronouns if you want, and please place an asterisk before your name if you are hiring, so people can reach out to you if relevant. We also invite those who are hiring to talk about it, the open position, during our interactive lunch break at 1:15. I would like to thank today's presenters, our sponsors, Simpson Thatcher and iManage, the Skills Planning Committee, Lucy, Mary, Tanisha, Ron, and Nick, the admin team, the amazing Stephanie, Lisa, Ashley, and Armando, for all of the effort of getting us up to this line. Skills is a true peer-to-peer conference. We kick off every season with a survey asking you what kept you busy in last year, what you expect to focus in the coming year, and what you want to hear about or present on. And then we vote on the sessions, the topics. The sessions that you'll see today were voted by the broad audience. And finally, we summarize the survey results. And thank you, Ron and Ab, for summarizing the results of the survey, which is posted on the homepage of skills.law. And we also get them during the lunch break. Ab and Ron will give us a very quick touch base on the key survey results. Pre-pandemic, Skills KM Summit was a one-day in-person event where knowledge and innovation leaders at the leading law firms came together to share their key takeaways and learn from each other. Post-pandemic, we added Skills Showcase, today's online event, which is open to the public and is a mixture of strategic discussions and rapid-fire presentations that highlights the latest developments in the legal sector. Today's event is broadcast live, and the recording will be posted on skills.law. Let's talk about the agenda for today. The format of the sessions is a content session followed by showcase sessions. At the end of each showcase session, we will ask you to vote on how inspiring or helpful was the session. And at the end of the day, we'll announce the winner. After each 3 showcases, we'll break to a small group discussion. The breakout rooms are not broadcast live, and anything shared there should not be tweeted or posted on social media. And we want to have an intimate and honest conversation about the sessions, your key takeaways, reaction, what you like, what you're going to take away. When you enter the breakout rooms, please turn on your camera and microphone and jump straight into the conversation. Zoom chat. During the sessions, please use the chat to ask your questions. You will see, other than the first panel, which is going to be 100% live, each session starts with a pre-recorded video. During the video, you can ask your questions. We ask you that you write the word question in all caps, so the moderators of those sessions will be able to spot it from the rest of the conversation. Just be short in your questions so people can find and answer them. During the interactive lunch break, we will invite the 4 presenters who almost made the showcase cut to share a 1-minute description of the video submissions that we encourage you to watch them on skills.law after the conference. Ron and Ab, as I said, will also briefly review the survey results and will host an open forum for anyone who wants to participate. We'll be inviting people who are hiring to announce their open positions. Please remember to have your camera on if you want to participate during the lunch, and it's totally optional. Alternatively, you could eat. Now for the house rules. So first of all, join the conversation. You could join us on skills.law page on LinkedIn. That's where we'll continue. And afterwards, it's going to be on the website, all the recordings of everything. Some things to expect on the house rules. So please, anything is recorded. So anything that's happening during the live conversations is public, but anything that happens, and if you want, use the hashtag skills.law. And the group chat is not going to be recorded. So anything in the chat, you could see it, but it won't be saved or shared afterwards. I asked, reminder, rename yourself, name, firm, title, pronouns, and if you are hiring, please put an asterisk before your names. During the presentation, please stay muted. Use the chat to ask your questions. And after each one of the showcases, we're going to have a poll, quick, asking you how much you enjoyed and find it inspiring. During the breakout rooms, which are not going to be broadcast for the people who are watching us live, accept the invitation to the room immediately so we could start the conversation. We don't want to lose time on waiting for people. Turn on your camera and keep the conversation on the topic. If you need any help at any moment, email info@skills.law and provide the phone number to be contacted. And with that, I'm going to ask Casey to introduce the panel and to take us from there. Casey.
Thank you so much for having us. I'll try and be brief and get to the stars of the show, my friends Lydia, Darth, and Whitney. But first, I'm going to give you a little readout, and starting with another friend and our patron saint, Jason Barnwell. So this is our good friend Jason Barnwell, General Manager of Digital Transformation for Microsoft Legal, and he's speaking at an event we organized in San Francisco. This was the second such event that we organized. We actually had 3. So we had events in New York, San Francisco, and London. Darth, Whitney, and Lydia spoke at both New York and London and did a fabulous job. And in particular, they did a fabulous job sharing their real-world experiences with Gen AI. So these invite-only gatherings were under the Chatham House rule because we wanted people to actually share what they were actually doing, because there is an enormous amount of talk on this subject and a fair amount of activity, but the ratio of talk to activity is mind-numbing. And frankly, if ignorance is bliss, then knowledge is, I would say pain. And we do seem stuck in a forever loop, in that AI is coming for lawyers yet again. All of you know that. He responded to the survey saying, this is what I've worked on the most this year. And there is a understanding that this time really is different. And yet it's not that different. We still have the same adoption challenges we've always had. We have all those barriers to change. They just keep coming back around. And this is one of the main things that we heard in these closed door sessions, where people were giving their real world experiences deploying generative AI. So the criteria for speaking at these sessions was you had to be far enough along in your Gen AI journey to have genuine lessons learned that were useful to the participants in the room. And you had to be able to share in a sufficient detail so that what you said was actually useful to the participants in the room. And the number of organizations, especially in-house counsel, that met that criteria was quite small. And that's because we are still very, very early days. And yet we at Lexfusion at least have been positing that this is happening. It's going to be done by you, or it's going to be done to you. The genie is not going back in the bottle. The era of stability is over. This is no longer a viable strategy. And yet this is a completely reasonable reaction. There is so much noise out there. It's really hard to identify the signal in that noise. This is a brand new word I just learned, argle-bargle, copious but meaningless talk, nonsense. There is so much of it. And I'd like to say that articles like this one that just came out from Stanford are contributing to the noise, because they're telling us that LLMs hallucinate, which we all know, and that you shouldn't rely on them for legal advice in their raw form, which we all know. Except apparently we still don't all know that. I'm not sure how many mediocre New York attorneys are going to go to a large language model to invent cases, but we still don't seem quite done with that cycle. Everyone still wants those easy buttons. You can read 120 articles on 120 mind-blowing AI tools, but very few of them are going to be honest that most of these tools suck. We are in for an absolute avalanche of garbage products that are thin wrappers on this tech that don't do what we need them to do. And what we need from them is the truth, where what they really want to do is give us answers. So what we want to do is just throw a document at GPT-4 or throw GPT-4 at a document and get whatever it is we want from that document. And yet it takes real engineering to get a response that the provided information does not exist in the document. A great example of this, and I thank my friend Haley Altman for sharing this, she's trying to crack that holy grail of deal points extraction, an automated population of a deal points database. Very, very valuable as your transactional lawyers are just screaming at each other about what's market. And yet the amount of engineering that goes into getting those seemingly simple answers from these very complex documents is way beyond let's just turn the models loose on our documents. There's an enormous amount of prompt engineering that goes into getting, again, accurate answers, actually getting to the truth at a level of accuracy that meets our thresholds. And that's where we're stuck right now in what a bunch of researchers at Harvard have called the jagged frontier, which is within the frontier, AI can do an enormous amount to help us with our work, increase quality of outputs, speed, etc. And yet, while it does much more for average performers than it does for high performers, there are tasks that are outside of the frontier where it makes us worse. And here's the big problem with the frontier, is that it's invisible. It's not just jagged, it's invisible. That is, we don't intuitively know the tasks where it makes us better versus those where it makes us worse. So we actually have to experiment and have experiments that are bold enough that they fail, where we find out where our intuitions were wrong. And I know just how much we hate that. And so we're going to have to figure out what is best left to humans in their modern human form, what they've now labeled centaurs, where there's a clear dividing line between what the machine does and what the human does, and where we're going to become cyborgs, where there's integrations of human and machines in completing certain tasks. And this is really about the automation of tasks, not the automation of jobs. And it's going to be a while. The road to product is long, and the road to implementation is even longer. We're all very, very excited about retrieval augmented generation, as we should be. And yet all those who have tried it have learned that their data hygiene problems are only heightened. They're only more acute than they were before. Garbage in, garbage out still applies. Data is still siloed. And so now we have these big projects to get our data in order, which we already should have had, but there's much more impetus than there ever was. And it's all the same challenges of industrializing knowledge. We are moving more and more towards a project economy, but there is, of course, the very simple problem that we are terrible at projects. And we are terrible at projects because we want those benefits immediately. We hate implementation dips. And so we have a consistent habit of going back to the status quo rather than suffering through the work to get to a new equilibrium. Again, people want to take shortcuts, and we're going to see a lot of people taking some very stupid shortcuts. There might even be some car dealers out there who make less than prudent decisions when deploying this technology. Things are going to get worse before they get better, in part because people are going to rush out products that aren't ready, and in part because to make projects ready, we're going to have to invest resources that are going to be we're going to need to pull through from somewhere in a resource-constrained environment. All apologies to Ron. There is no good empirical evidence that the Gartner hype cycle is actually a thing, except it is a thing in our consciousness. And I think we've probably hit peak hype. That said, we're going to see lots of instances, not only of going through the trough of disillusionment, but plenty of things just simply going off the rails. But just because we're at peak hype doesn't mean we're not at an actual technological inflection point. Hype always accompanies a technological inflection point. So you can have hype without an inflection point, but you're never going to get an inflection point without hype. We believe at LexFusion that we've entered another technological super cycle. These happen faster, and they're more impactful because they're compounding. That is, each cycle builds upon the last, and we're at the front end of yet another one. And yet this will take time. While there's all kinds of talk, the actual number of deployments thus far are quite limited. Last year, about $16 billion was spent on Gen AI at the enterprise level. It's about the same as the legal tech market, which, as we all know, unfortunately, is a small, sad corner of the universe. But it's over a 70% compound annual growth rate. By 2027, it should be at around 150 billion, which will be about the aggregate revenue of the AmLaw 100. It's growing very quickly. A very recent survey of CEOs suggested, one, that 100% of them were planning on making significant investments in generative AI, and 63% of them were planning to do so by tapping other existing budgets. And I do not think the law department will be exempt from that. And that's despite the fact that law departments are already tapped out in so many different ways. They are completely overwhelmed, and demand just keeps going up. And AI is only going to make it go up even further. Law departments are poorly positioned for this. It's like starting a game of Tetris way behind with the blocks falling quickly, and yet it's inevitable. This is coming, and this was one of the main takeaways from all of our closed door sessions. It's really hard. It is going to get worse before it gets better, but it's happening regardless. We are stuck in Jevons paradox, where because we're going to be able to do more, we're going to do more. Lawyers are going to have to embrace this technology, not to get ahead, but just not to fall behind. And this is totally unfair. No one has the time. No one has the budgets. No one has the patience. And yet it's happening nonetheless. We're running faster and faster, only to fall behind more slowly. But again, it's coming. This is from a forthcoming paper, part 2 of Sense and Sensibility, from Jay and Ed Sohn, our great friends, both of whom spoke at our sessions, predicting that AI deployment will impact 80% of the corporate legal spend. That is both internal and external spend on the delivery of legal services. And that's going to happen not within a 5-month period, but within a 5-year period. And so now is very, very much the time, because if you don't start on this road now, you'll be way behind in terms of getting there when we get going. The analogy I use is that we've invented Formula One engines, and we're loading them onto golf carts. That is our existing processes and infrastructure. Yes, we need to build the full Formula One cars. Yes, we need the pit crews. Yes, we need lots of things. But if you're just going to wait till that car is available, you're going to be sitting there reading the manual when the green light goes and everyone else is off to the races. You're going to fall behind very quickly and never catch up if you've had absolutely no time on the track. Article just from this week that I love, that articulates this much better is on the weight equation. And in particular, I'm very focused on this idea of a learning trap. That is, we have to learn what this tech can and can't do and how to use it. And if we try and learn on the fly, when everyone else is getting up to full speed, we're going to crash and crash hard. We are subject to this fundamental tension in strategy, which is we want that which is reliable, which we know is going to work, but nothing truly innovative can be, by definition, proven in advance analytically. We do have to place bets. We do have to experiment, and we are bad at those things. And so with that, I want to turn it over to people who are actually quite good at those things. My great friends from Ford and Microsoft, who have been on this particular journey pretty much longer than anyone. And they have been quite generous, both in closed door sessions and out in public, sharing their insights from where they are thus far. And so with that, Whitney, Lydia, Darth, thank you for being here, and I flip it to you.
Thank you, Casey. All right. We'd like to introduce ourselves. Whitney, if you could start us off.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that great intro, Casey. I don't know that we're going to meet your slide expectation, but I hope to use the word argle bargle at least 10 times in this presentation today. My name is Whitney Stefko. I'm Associate Director and Senior Counsel of the Legal Ops team here at Ford. Previously, I was a litigator, played in entrepreneurship, fintech, and somehow got dragged back into legal ops and technology by my colleague, Darth.
Yeah, I did that. I'm Darth Vaughn. I'm the Managing Director of our Legal Ops Plus team. I'm also litigation counsel, where I manage a few verticals for litigation. Before joining the legal industry, I was actually a technology consultant way back in the day, and I've kind of merged the two disciplines at the right time. Lydia.
Hi, I'm Lydia Petrakis. I'm Senior Corporate Counsel and Digital Strategist at Microsoft in our corporate, external, and legal affairs. So the acronym for that, CELA, if you hear me say it. Prior to this role, I served as product counsel at Microsoft, working with our Office 365 engineering teams, and then I worked in-house elsewhere on product, privacy, commercial transactions, and many others. So I get to take my passions of law and technology into a full-time job now.
So I think Casey set this up nicely. What we're running into right now is market forces colliding with an emerging technology to show us what we've known all along, that we have a productivity problem. And it's acute in many ways for the reasons Casey stated. And we just know things are going to start moving faster. An avalanche of things are going to be coming down the pipeline in the next couple of years, because not only are we leveraging this emerging technology, our clients are leveraging it. So the speed at which things are being developed, produced, is exponentially increasing. So we, both our organizations, Microsoft and Ford Motor Company, have been looking into the application of artificial intelligence to the practice of law for a number of years. And we ran into a issue in that, just recently the technology has kind of caught up with the words, but we're finding, I think, through our respective journeys, that some things are staying the same, and we're still experiencing some of the same problems. And Whitney, what is that problem?
Yeah, in addition to productivity, we still as an industry have a significant data problem. We're still data rich, but information poor. Casey talked a lot about data hygiene issues, and by some estimates, only 10% of data that we have available to us in the legal industry is usable. Most of it is unstructured, dirty data. Dirty data in means dirty data out. And it truly is sort of the perfect opportunity for a technology like generative AI to come in and help us solve both this productivity and data problem. It's really the first time that we've been able to kind of look at a technology like this and think, wow, we might actually have an opportunity to kind of solve these quintessential issues for us really being able to accelerate at the pace we need to keep up with this kind of technology.
So Lydia, that means the robots are going to come and fix everything, right?
Yeah, I wish it was magic. That would be nice. We often feel like it is magic, especially as we're sitting and seeing all the marketing demos. We think it's all just magical. We're going to go back to our desks and all of our problems are solved. But generally, that's not the case. It's kind of the head banging on the computer, like the image Casey showed earlier. So it's powerful, but it's not magic. There's a journey. And this is because if we look at our data, as Whitney said, it is unstructured, but it's also siloed. So across a large organization like Microsoft or Ford, our data is often siloed across different teams, practice groups, you name it. And what happens is when we bring in these robots, our generative AI, to this unstructured and extremely siloed, ungoverned data, well, they come in, they hit the data, and they malfunction. They don't work right. We don't get that expected return, and definitely don't get that feeling of magic yet.
All right, so
but go ahead.
I was going to say, but so you've been in your journey for over a year with generative AI, as have we. What has been kind of your landing place of where you should start?
Yeah, so it's like everything. It's a continuous journey that we're on to figure out the solution and how it's going. But really what we're finding is that if we start building out our strategy and our infrastructure to build a data factory, so really start thinking about a way to unify all of our data, identify it across all the different areas, and really build on those digital transformation efforts, we start getting better data, and we start getting data that we actually know where it is. Because I don't know about y'all, a lot of our data is in people's inboxes and mail. So that's been a challenge. So when we actually start doing this, you can see our robots are a lot happier. They can actually start reasoning over data and optimizing for AI experiences. And so whether you're talking about privacy, regulatory contracts, you name it. If we go to our next slide, this really data factory and our digital transformation layer are building the foundation for our strategy. Now, I'm not saying we have it all figured out. We're actually pivoting and figuring out all the best ways to implement this. But what it does is it creates that foundation to bring in generative AI. So for us, we're using a lot of Microsoft technology, Azure OpenAI, Copilot, Bing. We're looking at Fabric, you name it. And then it gives us the ability is to layer with that and augment all of the great out-of-the-box capability on legal workloads, specific uses and needs. So we look at advise, transact, and comply, and bringing in a mixture of first and third party and really building on it. And so that is going to be how we really start thinking about it. So sum it up, what's really like a data factory? It's the way to think about best organizing, managing, and optimizing your data to leverage it for insights and intelligence and really accelerate your AI journey. But we can't forget that all of this has continued to be possible by digital transformation. So it's that recipe of success. So we think of process automation, data, and AI as a continuous circle together.
So, we had a similar experience, and we thought, however, that because of the uniqueness of this technology, that the benefits would be readily apparent. And we were surprised when we onboarded it and began to try to parse it out to our constituents. The reaction was similar to what we've seen with other emerging technologies. No way, not me, because they're unique, right? Just like everyone else. And even though we would show them examples where truly unique people have been displaced by emerging technologies, what kind of was the response we saw, Whitney?
Yeah, the headlines don't do us any favors in a lot of regards. And a lot of what we're seeing in the news these days are bad use of this type of technology. From a change management perspective, this makes it even more challenging for us to really deploy these types of technologies internally and get the necessary traction and evangelism that we really look for when deploying and integrating this type of technology. This poor lawyer in New York sanctioned for using the fake ChatGPT cases. We just saw Casey's article with Mr. Cohen, and I'm sure we'll see many, many more. But The truth is the lack of, or the inability for a lot of these lawyers to use technology effectually is not new. We saw the same during COVID with one of my favorite "I'm not a cat" scenarios. This particular lawyer had logged into his virtual judicial hearing. Unfortunately, he had a cat filter on his Zoom technology, and during the hearing could not figure out how to take that off. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend logging into YouTube and taking a look for a good chuckle. But he attended the entire hearing as a cat. Now, in this instance, interestingly, we didn't blame Zoom for the failures of this particular lawyer and his inability to remove his cat filter. We sort of joked and said, this is just someone who's not using the technology properly. And I think that that's the same scenario that we're in now. We have a change management issue. We have a human issue. We don't have a technology issue. And that's truly, I think, one of the biggest lessons that we've seen over the last 18 months in deploying this type of technology in-house, both with our internal lawyers, as well as collaborating with some of our outside law firms in use cases. And we're starting to see state bar associations, federal courts, the White House, certainly the Supreme Court has come down recently with guidance on how they're interpreting artificial intelligence regulations and standards, and how we as lawyers need to engage with this type of technology. But truly, it is building a culture of integration and agility and adaptability when it comes to these kinds of technologies that has been, I think, the biggest challenge with us truly being able to integrate into that.
So if it's not a tech problem and it's a skill or people problem, Lydia, how are you focusing on that culture piece?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a human-centric problem. And this is not new for any technology, but it is highlighted now with our generative AI. So we look at it from a couple of different ways and perspectives to really shift on how we work. So all of it starts with having strong executive buy-in and leadership, as well from top down and bottom up, and ways that we can help with this culture of innovation and that early adopter spirit. This is with communications, storytelling to highlight the people that are modeling the way, but also really we're learning this continuing storytelling to help people really understand what it takes to get there. Skilling and upskilling our people. It's no longer just keyword searches and Bing or Google or whatever search engine you may use. It is actually interacting with the technology and a natural human interface. So it's helping people understand that we actually do have the tools to do that using language as legal professionals, but we have to interact with the technology more of a conversation like we would with our colleague or a new associate, an intern, et cetera. And incentivize and recognize. If we don't continue to recognize and incentivize that this is part of everyone's responsibilities in the department, it's not just one group or over here in this silo, it's everybody as part of the journey. And lastly is this really thinking about your sponsors and your catalysts. So we've actually renamed our kind of community of individuals to our AI catalysts instead of tech champs, right? So rebranding and really focusing on mission.
And I just want to focus in on something that Lydia hit about having a leadership's buy-in in this. I previously mentioned that we initially thought that if we just made this available to our colleagues, that they would flock to it because of the productivity gains. Where we certainly got traction in our journey was when the top of the organization, our GC, essentially said he wanted to know what each and every single individual was doing in this space for adopting and boosting productivity. That's when we saw engagement skyrocket. So while, yes, you have to work from the ground up, you definitely need a top-down approach, in my opinion, if you want to accelerate the type of gains you have here. Casey talked about the J-curve that we saw before. We made it a point to message to leadership that, in fact, there would be a dip in productivity, that onboarding this was still a change and human beings needed to adapt to that change. And I can tell you, at least from Ford's organization, and Lydia can chime in on Microsoft, that even though we've been in the Gen AI journey for over a year, we still haven't hit ROI. We are literally just getting here right now. Lydia, are you having the same experience over at Microsoft?
Sure are.
Well, I mean, so I guess from that standpoint, setting your expectations and the expectations of leadership that this is in fact an investment. And while the technology is powerful, that your colleagues will have to adapt to it and change the way that they work is critical. In starting out the journey, how did you go, Lydia, about finding the best use cases for the technology?
Yeah. So for us, we started with asking our people across the organization of where would they want to see generative AI help them with their experiences and day jobs. And we were fortunate, like we're talking about as well with leadership buy-in, that, you know, our chief legal officers, our executive sponsor of our initiative, as well as our chief data scientist. And so they help sponsor to make the survey to help people respond and understand the importance of this. And we actually got 250 ideas, which is very impressive for a survey. I don't know about y'all, but we're normally tired of surveys and trying to get answers. But we were able to really get a large group. We also talked about it in our large town halls across the entire organization.
We didn't have as many use cases, Whitney, but how did we go about it?
Yeah, we really approached sourcing use cases in two kind of ways. As Darth mentioned earlier, we did not get the excitement and motivation that we thought we would at onset of announcement of this technology and it being introduced into our legal department. And so we really approached sort of acquiring more folks' interest by first sending out a survey internally, really asking people to kind of tell us what the repetitive tasks that they were doing were, having them document the entire process of work streams from end to end so that we could then come in and identify key steps that were ideal for this type of technology. We also are in an interesting position with our collaboration with our outside counsel partners. And so we also had a pretty robust review of some of our billing entries to start to look at where we might be able to use this technology in collaboration with some of our outside counsel partners. We were very fortunate to have a lot of outside counsel partners who were already participating in their own pilots of this type of technology and were eager and interested in learning with us. And so really, sourcing sort of around 50 use cases and then narrowing down on a few specific use cases to establish our ROI, build our business use cases, and really learn how we could scale was how we approached kind of sourcing and then eventual integration with this type of technology.
So what was interesting was across both of our organizations, we're kind of three buckets for key investment areas, right, Lydia?
Yeah. So if you look at all the different ideas and that you've got, you really can start putting them to three key areas. So think of one as advise. So think of that knowledge management, chat experience, transact, no surprise, contracting, and comply with a really strong focus on regulatory. So all of our organizations are really facing the tsunami of regulatory requirements and thinking about how we're going to start monitoring and complying with that landscape at an accelerated pace. So these are three key focus areas that also really impact largely across your organization.
Yeah, so similarly across our organizations, we then kind of ranked those use cases. Whitney, if you could speak a little bit about the methodology behind that.
Absolutely. So we mapped all of the use cases that we identified onto this prioritization matrix. What was the potential return on investment of potentially optimizing any of those particular use cases? And what was the implementation complexity of doing so? And where we had low implementation complexity, but high potential ROI, we really focused our efforts on those particular use cases and scaling those particular use cases. Now, I will say that we didn't do this perfectly, and sometimes complexity and ROI can be a bit of moving targets. But again, focusing on the human-centered approach here and really communicating, in most instances, over-communicating with the stakeholders involved in those processes to make sure that they agreed with our assessment and that we were altering that as time went on in our learnings with the implementation of technology into their work streams was sort of imperative for us tracking each of those use cases and making sure we were prioritizing appropriately.
Whitney, I couldn't agree more. We did a similar approach with it, and that low-hanging fruit's been really helpful. But one of the things that helped make that implementation complexity is the teams that actually had spent the years prior investing in digital transformation versus the ones that had it. So sometimes that alone helped change the implementation complexity in itself. And then the other two ways that we looked at it we're seeing a lot of third-party market capabilities in the transact bucket, and we're experimenting with different areas, but not as much on that advise and comply. So that's another area where we spend a lot of time internally thinking about how do we handle this.
But Lydia, as Jason likes to say, you work at the candy shop, right? You've got access to data scientists. We have access to data scientists, multiple LLMs. Talk about that experience a little bit.
We do have a candy shop, which means we have opportunities and everywhere you look and turn. So early in the journey, even before we as a department had access to Copilot ourselves, and just as everything was starting to light up, we do have the benefit of having access to data scientists like y'all at Ford. And so we actually had a lab stood up. We called it our AI for CLO lab with different skills just to get people to start understanding what are the potential and the possibilities, the art of the possible, and having a safe place to actually be able to experiment with their real data, so not out in the public. And we just started learning, especially areas where we could get some more return on investment and really start that skilling and idea and innovation. And then now we've been able to continue to use some of this as playgrounds, experiments, but also we're able to start using even more of the technology that's out there today.
So safe space, time on the field, the ability to get reps in on using the actual tools. What's the curve for adoption at that point then?
Yeah, so it's still a curve. This is nothing new. You've probably seen this graphic before. So again, like Whitney, Darth, Casey have said beforehand, it's a journey and it's a people-centric, and people don't just come to the technology. So where we really have to start focusing is bringing in and helping people understand and having leadership support that we need people to come in early, play, adopt, and try and have that spirit. That it's not going to be magic and perfect. And most importantly is that we need that recipe of success of technical expertise and subject matter expertise together.
So Lydia, with respect to productivity, we've seen increases in two areas. One is the speed at which we're getting things done, and two is the quality. And they're different in those two different buckets. What's been the experience of Microsoft? And we can talk about the experience of Ford.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're already seeing how Gen AI can help with knowledge works. And these are exciting numbers that we saw from developers using GitHub. And a lot of this, and Darth and Whitney, we were talking, a lot of this is really in parallel with what we're seeing of potential and capabilities for other knowledge work like legal. But one of the really great areas that we've been talking about is that draft quality. So if we look at the next one, we know that we often start before AI is that average work product, and the likelihood that we're ever going to get past good or great to outstanding is pretty rare because we don't have a lot of time. We're going fast, we're getting more work, and it requires a lot of humans to be like, hey, Whitney, can you take a look at this? Hey, Darth, can you take a look at this? And to refine it. But with AI, we're able to actually start more at the good to get to the outstanding quicker because we have an assistant right there in the tools that we work in to actually help refine, create first drafts or refine what we're doing, changing tone, adding structure. But I would say that I think a column is almost missing in here. In the middle is that just like the J curve you were showing earlier, sometimes it takes extra investment and even longer to get to that outstanding with AI category because we have to learn and practice our prompting. So for me, it took me a while to get there. And then now that I've started understanding, I'm getting returns quicker.
At Ford, we had a similar experience, increases in speed, increases in quality, but specifically we found some tasks that had big or better boosts based on the end user. Whitney, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, without a doubt, the task category, so any task that had sort of a summarization component is where we've seen the biggest productivity increase with our users. And as Casey mentioned, there's certainly a difference between what we're calling super users versus a less mature user in the technology. But without a doubt, that is a net win when we start thinking about where we can look to scale some of these use cases and what will be most productive across the organization. One of the ones that we're most excited about and kind of seeing some early wins in is the comparing info against reference materials. I think that there's a really big opportunity here for the technology to advance, but the users are really demanding this. This is a hot topic interest area. This is something we're hearing continuously and not something that we've really seen the tech solve just yet.
So Lydia, summing it up.
agree with all of them, especially on that compare. We've been getting about, I don't know, 10 requests, I think, the last 2 weeks of help me understand if this like new bill regulation and how does it align with what our internal policy is. That's been like one of the top questions the last 2 weeks. But summing it up for us, and when we talked about it, we have a lot of similar learnings across our org. So one, if you haven't heard the word enough, say it 3 more times, data. So really thinking about the underlying data for your organization. Prompting is important, as being able to understand how to actually get the outcome that you want, and knowing you are going to experiment. You are not going to get it right. You are going to refine it, and then start thinking about how do we share in those learnings with others internally and externally to help us move forward the needle on prompting. Patterns. So no, not everything is unique, as Dar's earlier slide, and not everyone's a special snowflake. There are patterns that we can apply. And then so importantly is the advancements of POCs and digital transformation efforts, but really focusing on ones that have tangible, relatable experiences. So for example, we just released a request for early adopters to test a POC, and it was one of the quickest and highest response rates that we had, including a lot of our senior leaders, because it is focused in our regulatory area. It's a partnership we've been working on with EY, and we were able to actually say, hey, we're going to try to test these very relatable skills based on workflows and things that you do already that they need. Leadership shapes all of our engagement, and culture is just so important. We've been talking about it. Whitney's going to talk about it a little bit more. So I would just emphasize that so much.
Yeah, our experience is that we have messaged that this technology is not here to replace anyone. It's here to enhance people. And we're finding that bookending the platforms and the tools with human activity and subject matter expertise is critical. It's not enough just to have it. You have to have people that know how to use it, and they have to be domain experts in whatever they're using it for. Some of the obstacles we've seen, obviously, is reliability and trust. People either don't trust the platforms themselves, the technology themselves, or I think in some instances, you've seen instances where there's over reliability on the output. Again, not using your subject matter expertise to vet the quality of the output. And integration, because our data is all over the place, it's difficult to be a one-stop shop everywhere. Whitney, the change management component, where does that rank?
Yeah, you know, Darth, if you want to bump to the next slide, we were talking last night about what our sort of key learnings were. If we could do this all over again, start 18 months ago, what would we do? And change management is a slow and gradual process, and it's also human-centered. So while I think we got to the place of really focusing on kind of the human-centric approach with not only our education around this type of technology, but also our deployment, our scaling, and then our feedback loops, I really wish that we had done that right from the jump. The pace at which this technology is evolving is quick, and we really need to make sure that we are incorporating our colleagues and you know, the mindsets that everyone has around that evolution, and creating those skills of adaptability and agility right from the first step.
Lydia, what would you have done different?
Yeah, so I think some of it that I would have probably done differently is looking at it is bringing in actual practicing professionals in our groups with our technical experts in the room much earlier. So similar to what he's talking about, so they really understand what is possible and also what it really takes to get to that rollout. So we've all been trying to move super fast, and I wouldn't change that for the world, because we've been able to experiment, iterate, fail, learn fast. But bringing everyone in together and thinking about how, when we're doing those quick, fast rollouts, how can you be more strategic to bring people along and not just focus on the technical?
I think for me, the thing I would have done different, I don't know that we could have done this given the speed at which we were all trying to adapt and adjust to this, but I would have partnered with like-minded organizations so that we could have learned together. I think we could have exponentially accelerated where we are by doing that and sharing our mutual experiences. I don't know that that was possible 18 months ago, but moving forward, that's our intention, because we think that doing it together in a collective way will allow us to scale at a speed that we probably can't do even with a really great legal ops team here.
I couldn't agree more. I'm glad that we're working together even more and look forward to working with others.
Absolutely. I think we have a minute or so left. Oz, I'm not sure we're on time, but if you want to open it to any questions, we're happy to give a final shot.
Lucy, 1 or 2 questions?
I don't see any in the chat for the minute.
The one question was whether you're going to share your slides.
I don't care. We can put them in PDF format. There's probably some notes that we shouldn't share.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm going to write up my portion of it and post it, and so those will all be online too. Great. Well, sorry for not leaving enough time for Q&A, but glad that we ended on time. And Oz, thank you for having us, and back to you.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm taking over here. This is Lucy Dillon. Thank you very much. And I see there is a question. Please do put them in the chat. And I'm sure that those who were speaking will respond in the chat. So don't let the conversation stop just because this section of our day has come to an end. So hi everyone, I'm Lucy Dillon. I am moderating this first session, and we're going to jump straight into our first video, which is from BakerHostetler, and they are going to talk about the framework their firm adopted for implementing AI.
Hello everyone, my name is Catherine Lowry. I'm Chief Information Officer and Head of Incubator at BakerHostetler. Today, I'm joined with Elaine Dick, who is also a Knowledge Management Manager here at Baker, and we together are going to present the AI-powered law practice from data to innovation.
So let's get started. In order to have an AI-powered practice, you need to ask a fundamental question. Can we build a data-driven law firm? We think the answer is yes. And at BakerHostetler, we've been on this journey since 2015. And we're here to show you a couple frameworks and some tools that will help you along your journey. First and foremost, have a data strategy framework. This is one that we've been using for years. It started with a data flow analysis at the bottom, understanding what data sources we had across the firm, what were systems of record, what was integrated, what were sitting as data silos. Next, and what I think is so important for this conversation, given that we're talking about AI, is data discovery. This is an access point for your citizen data scientists to be able to traverse and analyze integrated data sets and be able to generate answer sets that are related to business questions. This is the access to raw data that we've used for machine learning and that we hope to be using for generative AI as well.
The legal industry has a big text problem. Our assets reside in our human workforce and the significant amount of raw information they create. This information is often found in PDFs, Word documents, spreadsheets, time narratives, and more. As you begin to look at harvesting this data, you will quickly see that the tip of the iceberg, only around 20% of it, is structured, which is great. But the other about 80% is unstructured. In order to effectively utilize this 80%, we need to refine it into a structured format. Now, can generative AI solve our unstructured data problem? This year, our incubator team sought out to find the answer to this question in the context of court filings, and we started with complaints. The majority of the complaints are unstructured text using unpredictable verbiage, often unique to the author of the complaint. We wanted to know, can we use generative AI to harvest information such as alleged injuries, supporting facts, and relationships between parties in a way that would allow us to gain meaningful insights from each complaint?
With the introduction of new technology like generative AI, we would strongly encourage you to use an innovation framework. It's a disciplined approach to evaluating the new technology, exploring and helping mitigate risks, being able to create and share knowledge on your lessons learned, experiment and building use cases that can be aligned with business goals, monitoring your success, mitigating that risk before you release any application. In some instances, you may not. With generative AI, it was important for us to get our arms around what the technology could do, understand it, understand what our role would play inside of either building applications or consuming applications. We chose to secure a private GPT-4 model, which we call Baker Brain, and we worked alongside of our attorneys, our leadership, and supporting departments to identify over 100 use cases. We spent an enormous amount of time working on our security due diligence and building vendor risk assessments and drafting AI guidelines. We are continuously trying to engage our firm, our attorneys, our clients, and staff to help make sure that they're aware of what this tool may be able to do. This innovation framework can take many forms, but I hope this serves as a good roadmap for you to evaluate new technology like generative AI. Elaine, now that we have an innovation framework in place, how about you share some of our use cases and a tool that will help with prioritization?
One tool we used when applying the innovation framework to generative AI is what we call the impact effort chart. This chart will allow you to organize your use cases according to their business value and feasibility to your organization. Here you will see where many popular Gen AI use cases could land on this chart. In the upper right quadrant, or the high effort, high impact, you'll see the litigation data extraction use case I presented earlier. While it has the potential to have a high impact at our firm, it will also take a large amount of effort. The upper left quadrant contains use cases that will have a high impact but will require a lower amount of effort. Think of these as your low-hanging fruit. While the lower right quadrant is also low effort, these use cases will have a low business value. Lastly is our lower right quadrant, where you'll find use cases that are both high effort and low impact. Use this tool as a way to help you organize your potential use cases and effectively evaluate where you should start.
Thanks, Elaine. Here's another tool that we'd like to share with you, the vendor risk assessment. It is inherently important for you to understand what models they're using, all the way down to what contractual terms that you and your organization are willing to agree to. Along this journey, you should be asking how they might modify the large language model, whether it's in beta or production. How are they storing and for how long are they storing information that you input and or output from these models? What inputs or filters that they may append or apply to them? And then probably one question that's most often overlooked include what additional costs will apply with the use of large language models? Do I have an ability to control or cap those costs? This assessment has been rolled up for you. There's going to be many other questions that you're going to want to follow up on, but I think if you start here, you will have a nice roadmap for understanding what risk you may have to assume when a vendor is using a large language model. Elaine, I'm going to pass it back to you to show some of the work that we did this summer regarding generative AI and data extraction.
So, can generative AI solve our unstructured data problem? Based on the experimentation we've done with complaints, it seems like a promising tool that can solve it. As you can see, using our Baker brain, we're able to harvest tangible insights in categories where the answers only lie within unstructured data, without any hallucinations. While generative AI is not the answer to all of our problems in the legal industry, it's clear that with a good data strategy and working through the innovation framework, we're able to turn the right use cases into wins.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call Catherine and Elaine up to answer some Q&A from their session. A couple of questions have come up. One is, what were your processes for uncovering and testing hallucinations?
We utilized various ways to test our experiments in our Baker brain, and we're fortunate enough to work with a GSU student who actually just graduated in December, who was a double major in JD and a master's in data science. So he was able to design experiments within our Baker brain and really spend a lot of time just going back and forth and experimenting on that to see what would be best based on the various experiments we were running.
I would probably add to that too, even before we got into this specific use case that Elaine demonstrated here, that we had a lot of our legal process engineers even simultaneously testing our GPT-4 model to see, what kind of inputs we put in the same question, what would that look like, and adding additional information and measuring inside of Azure OpenAI, you have the ability to change the temperature. So we would change the temperature from 0.3 to 0.9, and we would document that. So, early on, we figured out we could make it more creative and then use kind of a generative AI masterclass to help us learn how we could reduce hallucinations through the use of vector databases and things like that.
Thank you. And another question, how do you evaluate the performance of the generative systems responses?
I'll go first, Elaine. A lot of times it's a side-by-side comparison. So in the early days, we were taking the output and we were comparing it and showing where it might have gotten a little more creative and or where it was exactly pulling from the text. So that's side-by-side comparison helped us out and still helps us out today. I think it's an iterative process to go back in the use case that Elaine was showing, an iterative process to go back and try to update the guide that we created for data extraction and constantly measure and see if we can make it more successful. Elaine, any other thoughts there?
Nope, I think that's mostly it. We are still human in the loop. We aren't trusting this technology 100%. We are still reviewing things. So yeah, but still take some reading on our part.
Okay.
I have one quick question. In the very first framework, and I loved your frameworks. Thank you for sharing those. You talked about your integrated data sets, and I just wondered what data sets you integrated.
So we have a variety, of course. Our internal information we're trying to marry with external information. Unicord is one data set that we've worked with that team for many, many years now, and we're pulling information out and leveraging that as inside of our data lake for records of parties and case name and so on. So a lot of that structured information, if we can buy it, we will, and incorporate then and marry it with our internal information. But there's probably 8 different data sets. Unicord's just one of them.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
One of DLA Piper's brand pillars is modern dynamic innovator. As such, our leadership is committed to being a pace setter when it comes to legal technology. To meet that mandate, the firm looks to the knowledge department to continually assess the landscape of available tools. The firm counts on us not only to understand the technology and its application to the practice of law, but to also balance a number of competing priorities. They include the cost, the potential return on investment, scalability, ethical considerations, and client concerns. As you will hear from my colleagues, our legal technology work took a sharp pivot in November of 2022 when we were given early access to something known as a generative pre-trained transformer. We have been on that path ever since with no end in sight. I am now going to turn it over to the rest of the team to tell you more. Elizabeth?
As Barbara mentioned, the Knowledge Department got access to our first GenAI tool, CoCounsel, at the end of 2022. This gave the KM team the unique opportunity to become familiar with the technology very early on. In early March 2023, while the KM team was still testing use cases and providing feedback, Casetext let us know that the product would launch commercially in about 2 weeks. True to our pacesetter commitment, firm leadership decided to become one of the first enterprise-wide subscribers. To prepare for the full launch, we expanded our pilots as senior attorneys and then full matter teams. These users provided us invaluable feedback, which informed our onboarding process. Because this was an important first step on a larger GenAI journey, firm leadership kicked us off with a launch email and video to generate excitement and highlight the importance of GenAI to the firm's modern dynamic innovator brand. We created 3 prerequisites for CoCounsel access. First, attending an ethics CLE that explains the underlying tech and reminds attorneys of their ethical and professional obligations. Second, acknowledging the firm's policy on acceptable use of GenAI. And third, attending a specific CoCounsel training. Once we launched, we wanted to make it easy for our attorneys to use the tool, so we provided sample prompts and a sandbox with a variety of databases. We're also holding weekly office hours for people to ask questions and share feedback, and we'll offer a CLE on prompt writing. Sunny, can you give some more details about our CoCounsel launch?
90 minutes of mandatory training to access a new tool is essentially unheard of at DLA, but response has been tremendous. Within just the first 4 weeks, we had 26% of our lawyers complete the mandatory 60-minute CLE, and about 10% of all lawyers actively using CoCounsel. That represents hundreds of attorneys, and those numbers continue to increase. To monitor engagement, we use Power BI to track weekly usage both by person and task, filterable by practice and title. So I know, for example, we're currently averaging about 500 sessions a week with a big slant towards litigation work. To ensure all 3 training steps were completed, we mandated registration through our LMS university site. To ease the administrative lift, our IT team then wrote code to auto-populate an Active Directory group based on an LMS status of completed, and used Azure Skim to pass the AD list over to Casetext and auto-create their accounts, which then triggered automatic welcome emails to each new user. Of course, throughout our co-counsel journey, we've also been actively investigating other Gen AI offerings, including formal pilots of Harvey AI and Contract Pod AI's Leah. We expect to greatly expand this effort throughout 2024, both with existing platform enhancements and piloting of new products. Emily, can you share more about this effort?
At this point, the Gen AI tools we've mentioned were brand new to the market. Of equal importance and with their own set of challenges, we are also tracking when Gen AI functionality is added to an existing research tool. So far, we are seeing 2 primary scenarios. The Gen AI functionality is incorporated within a known platform, Patent Box or Bloomberg Tax, or the Gen AI is a new interface, Westlaw Precision and Lexis Plus AI. At this time, we are participants in a Lexis Plus AI beta and Bloomberg Law's Innovation Studio, and are known by our vendor partners to be honest and direct providers of feedback. We're also always adjusting our internal best practices to provide for easier onboarding and testing of these tools. As the leaders of DLA Piper's legal tech Gen AI journey, we're used to constant change and have embraced helping our lawyers learn how AI can help them practice smarter. We have attorneys clamoring to use Gen AI to solve all their problems, everything from 50-state surveys to legislative and regulatory monitoring to more innocuous streamlining their workflow. While in some cases Gen AI was a viable solution, in other situations we had other research or tech tools that were better suited to the task, which raised awareness of our team's existing tools and skill sets. While we're hopeful that Gen AI will solve these problems in the future, for now, we'll take the added interest in and boost to the knowledge team.
As you can imagine, it's an exciting time to be in the knowledge department at DLA Piper. I believe that we are well poised to deliver a meaningful competitive advantage to the firm. First, with a best-in-class suite of tools, and also by training our lawyers to be the best at using those tools. We are all viewing this 2 months after it was recorded. That is more like 5 years in Gen AI time, so a lot has likely changed. But with that caveat, I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we would love to have Barbara and Elizabeth come up to answer some questions. So the first question I have, is there a role for Gen AI in training? So is there a role for Gen AI in training associates, particularly in the early years? That's a hot topic, I know, at many firms.
Yes, I'll start on this one. I think that there probably is, and it's something that we're certainly looking into. The way that Gen AI can help our junior and other associates is by replacing some of the work that they have to put into the mundane tasks, but we still have to find a way and a path for them to then become the experts in the fields that they're practicing in. So we're looking at ways to do so. I think it could be a combination of using the Gen AI tool and the associate themselves. For example, if they use a tool to summarize a complicated document, an SEC release, whatever it is, we can then have them benefit from that summary to learn something quickly, but also have them review the document itself to maybe check the accuracy again and make sure that there's no gaps in there. So we get both sides benefiting from that approach. We can also make sure that it's used to identify different sides' arguments or positions. So on the litigation side, it could help identify arguments on the other side, and again, be a very good learning exercise. Or on the transactional side, you could use it, come up with positions, one side versus the other, and again, check that against the precedent that you would typically use. So again, I think the associates would get benefit out of it because they would have to dig deeper, but they have a head start because the AI will actually get them there faster.
Thank you. Some questions have come up in the chat. What reception are you getting from clients when talking to them about the technology?
That has really run the gamut. We have a fairly significant number of clients that are very excited and have actually used us as a sounding board for using Gen AI in their own legal departments. At the other end of the spectrum are clients that are extremely concerned about the privacy and information security aspects, although that was fully vetted before we went down this path. And so we often can meet with them and explain that and allay those fears. But I think that most clients understand that this is happening, that there's tremendous benefits for them, both in terms of their outside counsel using Gen AI to generate greater efficiency and in some instances, greater quality, but also for their in-house departments. And because investment is expensive, law firms are definitely ahead of the curve if you look at clients on balance. And so we are viewed as a resource to clients as they seek to learn for themselves.
Absolutely. And another question, what guardrails have been built into the DLA AI to confirm that human eyeballs have reviewed the AI output?
Well, we've got, as Elizabeth mentioned in the video, a series of requirements before you can even get credentials. And it's not just to CoCounsel anymore, it's to any new Gen AI product. And the first thing is an ethics CLE, and in that we make it crystal clear that AI is a legal assistant, it is not a lawyer. And so the ultimate responsibility for the work product still resides with that attorney, and they need to review whatever gets created from Gen AI the same way that they would work coming to them from a junior. But in addition to that, I think it's incumbent upon us as a knowledge department to really thoroughly vet everything before we introduce it to our attorneys. There's a big difference in technology out there, and what technology you're deploying makes a huge difference in terms of what the risks are with regard to things like hallucination. But so it's a combination of picking the right tech and making sure our lawyers understand that they still have the same ethical obligations to their clients, and they can't rely on this tool to do the lawyering.
Absolutely. I'm going to do one last question. We've got a couple of minutes. What was your feedback on using the 3 different AI tools, CoCounsel, Leah, and Harvey? I assume each is used for a different use case.
Well, we actually haven't had a chance to use Leah yet. There's a lot of steps to get a pilot going, and that's all taking longer than we thought. And the feedback with regard to CoCounsel and Harvey has a lot to do with your practice group. Harvey has proven to be very, very strong in transactional use cases and some litigation use cases as well. But because you have a legal database built in as retrieval augmented generation and CoCounsel, those use cases there are what Harvey doesn't purport to do legal research first. So you've only got that within CoCounsel, but you do see certain strengths for the litigators in CoCounsel. So it really does very much depend on your practice group.
And then just while the poll will come up, but one more question. Due to the immense challenges, one of the immense challenges is a shortage of right people to implement the project. Are you upskilling lawyers in the tech in the process, or upskilling technologists in law?
Yeah, we are trying to do both. Ultimately, lawyers it'll be very important for lawyers to be very good at using this technology, just like all of the other tools that they have at their disposal. But in the meantime, we want to make that as easy as possible, and so are trying to leverage our team as much as we can to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. There'll be technology enthusiasts amongst the lawyers and lawyer enthusiasts among the technologists. Absolutely. Thank you both very much for answering the questions. Our next session is a presentation by DeepJudge and one of their clients around the implementation of that AI generated search tools.
Hi everyone, I'm David Ozer, a partner in the M&A department of Homburger and responsible for introducing DeepJudge to Homburger.
And I'm Paulina, co-founder and CEO of DeepJudge.
Today we're going to share with you our experience of using DeepJudge knowledge search at our firm. Homburger is a law firm that has accumulated over 50 million internal documents, currently in an on-premise deployment including memos, client matters, emails, and much more. I think you will all agree that while such a huge collection of past work holds tremendous value to a law firm, Finding it and being able to reuse it is the problem. Our knowledge cannot provide us with any value unless it can be retrieved by everyone easily. For us, search is a major part of the solution. We want to give our people the ability to efficiently and effectively find the most relevant information in the DMS and beyond, whether as part of looking for a precedent or pitching to a new client. For instance, I can now search for termination for extended force majeure that requires a notice. As you can see, it finds language with that similar meaning in previous contracts, even though they are worded quite differently. The DeepJudge search is an AI-powered search that works by understanding the intent behind the query. Now let's put force majeure in a different context. Say I'm looking for a definition of force majeure. Now, as you can see, the results change. They are still force majeure provisions, but with a focus on definitions. Or maybe I'm looking for a very specific definition where I also protect my client from breakdown of key equipment. For example, definitions of force majeure that includes breakdown of critical equipment components. As you can see, it matches results containing failure of equipment or machinery with breakdown of critical components. Knowledge search allows us to write intuitive queries and to be as specific as we want to be. Something that was not possible before with the keyword-based enterprise search engines we used.
By combining large language models with frequency-based search, we can offer a very powerful retrieval experience, either on the level of a clause, a paragraph, a document, or a matter. Beyond this, DeepJudge is scalable and can easily handle hundreds of millions of documents with a retrieval time of around 1 second.
One learning was that inside the 50 million documents, there is obviously a lot of mess, and staying organized is a challenge. What the DeepJudge team did was superimpose a lot of metadata automatically using AI to allow for easy filtering. The AI-predicted metadata and filters we use most often are the ones you can see on the top, such as excluding red lines and invoices. All of these categories are automatically recognized by the tool. Noteworthy is that DeepJudge added the ability to recognize duplicates and also near duplicates, so that my results page is not cluttered by essentially the same document over and over again. In addition to these, a filter we often use is the automatic taxonomy, which classifies each contract in one of over 600 contract classes and each document into document classes. For instance, I can search for these definitions only in share subscription agreements. With the help of DeepJudge, we were able to customize these contract classes to our firm's preferences. Another key learning is that a powerful search engine like this, which is actively helping us take care of the internal mess, is the perfect entry point for a generative model to connect our entire internal collection.
We have all heard of the paradigm garbage in, garbage out. If users can't identify the right knowledge, neither can generative AI. That's why we built Knowledge Assistant, which is a generative-based model that interacts with the knowledge search to perform high-level tasks. As we know, generative models are not precise, which means that they really need to be paired with a search engine that is semantic and can efficiently find the most relevant results out of millions of documents. For instance, if I give it a task of find recent anti-dilution provisions in preferred stock purchase agreements for startups in Series A, what happens is that the assistant self-decides what to search for. In the next step, the assistant reads only the relevant part from the relevant documents and gives back an answer which can be a summary, a table, or any overview you would like. There are several things to unpack here. By using this combination, what we immediately get is a generative model that has a live connection to the DMS and other sources. Additionally, all ethical walls and access right permissions are respected, as those are embedded in the knowledge search. And the same filters apply, which means I have the freedom to point the assistant to the entire DMS, a single matter, or even an individual document. Finally, all the sources are cited, which avoids hallucinations. Here, if I click on any part of the underlying text, the full document opens up so I can verify where it comes from.
Note that this is happening in real time on our entire document collection. We don't have to upload any files or interrupt the work by having to wait. Previously, something like this would have meant spending lots of time searching in our internal collection. Since launching last August, we've seen immediate adoption of more than 2/3 of the law firm from all practice groups. Knowledge search is a fundamental part of our work, and our lawyers were quick to adapt as it's as intuitive as using Google. The best part of the Knowledge Assistant is that it sits on top of our entire document collection, so we never have to upload anything. Interestingly, all of these results that we showed today were with a full on-prem search and assistant. I'm convinced that where AI will really make a key difference in our practice is the ability to find and reuse internal knowledge. We are excited to see what future updates DeepJudge will bring to us.
Hello, thank you very much for that. A question has come up. Have you used a Gen AI tool to also tag and label your documents to enhance the accuracy of the search?
Yes, we have. So we are using a lot of techniques from artificial intelligence to put a lot of labels on top of the unstructured data. As we heard before, around 80% of the data is unstructured, messy, often lacks a lot of labels. So we combine different techniques to superimpose a lot of metadata where it's missing or where it's necessary. Some of those are the classes of the contracts or the classes of the documents themselves, and also any additional structured information that is very useful either on a document level or matter level.
Yeah, I think the most useful for us was really the classification of all contracts and other similar documents, right? So we didn't have that before, so it was limited in what you could sort of classify. And so now each and every agreement, merger agreement, subscription agreement, investment agreement, so forth, is now classified automatically, which makes it a lot easier to narrow down your searches.
Here's a magic question. To what extent does this search substitute the need to have vetted precedents?
It doesn't in that sense, right? I think we heard that a number of times before, right? The lawyers are still responsible for looking at this, and they can use it as an assistant, essentially. That's why it's called assistant. But they need to make their own judgment whether that's the right one they can use. And we train them a lot on this. That's key. Training is key. So right now, I don't think we're there yet. That you can just use it and then rely on it that it's accurate. Yeah.
Lots of questions coming in now. Is the taxonomy built? Is it out of the box, or is it customizable by the firm?
Our taxonomy works out of the box. So we have over 600 classes of different document types that we can superimpose directly. But having said that, it is also very customizable. If the law firm has a given taxonomy or they want to work with a given taxonomy, it is very easy for us to adjust to that as well.
And a question that's come up a couple of times. What systems, what DMS systems do you integrate with, and any other systems you integrate with?
Yes, so we integrate with all of the document management system providers, specifically the bigger ones, also with some custom ones. But beyond the DMS, we also integrate with other sources, and actually as many sources as possible. So usually law firms would have a couple of SharePoints lying around where they store certain data, some curated databases like the KMS or even client-facing KMS. So we integrate with various different sources.
Great, thank you. And another question, one of the issues we're facing is the fear of extremely confidential documents entering this library, which is open to everyone. What are the guardrails do you have for that?
This is a great question. Actually, the search respects all of the access right permissions and ethical wall permissions that are inside the document management system and the other sources. And the interesting part is that by solving this problem with the search, then you immediately solve the problem for the assistant as well, because the assistant will never get to see a document that you're not allowed to see as a user, because the search is not going to serve the document.
And what languages does DeepJudge support?
So we originally come from Switzerland, so we are inherently multilingual. We do support all of the languages spoken here, so German, French, Italian, English, of course, and now we are adding more and more languages.
Fantastic. Are you using Sally as part of your tagging?
We are not, but we are working on integrating and making our taxonomy aligned with Sally.
Fantastic. How long did it take to roll out?
So we...
Okay,
So we started first with a pilot on a limited subset of the documents, and we recommend starting like this with, for instance, one practice group or a couple of matters, and then once everything is working, we roll out progressively to the entire law firm. So that took a couple of months. Usually for us, the rollout is fairly quick in terms of the efficiency of indexing the data.
How does the system learn? i.e., does it use inputted data to learn and evolve?
So in terms of the search, actually it is trained and it works out of the box. So there are certain things that you can do as feedback in order for us to improve the search. For instance, we have implemented thumbs up, thumbs down, in case a certain result is not accurate. Same for some of the predicted metadata, such as the document taxonomy. And then there are other types of feedback that are collected in the background, like how frequently a certain document is opened, how often you look at certain documents, but basically the search works out of the box and then it learns by direct feedback.
Fantastic. And last question for David. Can you share some examples of scenarios where real-time data retrieval has been crucial in your legal workflows?
I think the reason why I think it's a helpful system is mostly because you can use your entire database, right? Unlike other tools that we also looked at, right? There you have to upload it first and then do the analysis, or the tool makes the analysis on the basis of the documents you upload. Here, I think the big advantage is you can use your entire database. You can first do a search, narrow it down to what you're actually looking for, and then go to the assistant, as we call it, right, and do the AI assessment. So to me, that's the big advantage. It interfaces with your database, and therefore it's much more helpful in a way.
And a last question while we're waiting for everyone to complete the poll. What is there a limit on the number of documents that can be processed during a search for when using the assistant?
No, there is no limit. The search is very scalable. It can easily handle hundreds of millions of documents and even more. And as we know, making a search that really combines the best of enterprise search, including the generative AI approach of really intent-based understanding of query, to make that scalable is really hard. But we solved this with proprietary technology. And I think the interesting part is that by solving this for the search, we're solving it for the assistant as well, because the assistant uses the search in order to access all of the internal data.
Cool. Thank you both very much. There are loads more questions in the chat, so if you wouldn't mind at some point scrolling back through and responding, it keeps that conversation alive. So thank you very much.
Hi everyone, welcome back from the break. I hope you enjoyed the content this morning. I think it's been very interesting, inspiring. I can't wait to see the results of the polls as they start to come out, to see who is going to come out on top as our most inspiring informational session today. We are now going to move into our second segment of the day. We are talking about data-driven innovation, and we are going to start with our first video on data-driven innovation with Nicole Bradick and Kate Orr.
Hi, we're here to kick off the next few sessions on data-driven innovation. I'm Kate Orr, Global Head of Practice Innovation here at Oric. My work really focuses in two pillars. I work internally with our lawyers and practice groups and matter teams on how they do what they do, using the trifecta of people, process, and technology, really innovating to streamline and improve our legal services. And then I also work very closely with our clients and their legal departments and legal operations teams on the same challenges that they're facing and pain points they're facing in their practice and delivery of service to the business.
And I'm Nicole Bradick. I'm the CEO of Theory and Principle. We are a design and development agency that works with law firms and across the legal industry with legal tech companies and the like, and often are in the position to leverage data to create innovative digital products.
So turning to the topic at hand, the big picture. Data-driven innovation is really more than just a buzzword. It's a paradigm shift that's altering how we do what we do in all aspects of our businesses. So to level set on sort of the definition of data-driven innovation, at its core, data-driven innovation involves the strategic use of information, analytics, and technology to help make informed decisions, to streamline processes and workflows, develop new solutions, and ultimately, really, to deliver enhanced value to our clients, whether the business, in-house legal departments, or our own colleagues. I've heard data-driven innovation described as a compass, really guiding us through our practices and operations. It has the power to help us transform vast seas of data away from breaking waves in 20-foot seas into a navigational tool. And as a result, the data is really reshaping how we operate and collaborate and are delivering our legal advice. Critically, that reshaping augments our expertise. It doesn't replace it. This is not a case of robots are taking our jobs. Our ability to more easily capture and analyze data obviously makes work easier. That's great. But I think the real magic happens with data-driven innovation when we're able to unlock insights because of data and because of technology that were once impossible to glean due to just the resources it may take, whether that's time, people, power, or access to pull out those insights. So that opportunity to provide something new, to see something new, to me is the real magic. And so today we have our lawyers and legal professionals being challenged not only with the legal advice and to interpret laws, but to also decipher data, to really elevate their decision making. Whether they're extracting meaningful insights from databases to advise a client, or analyzing and predicting outcomes, visualizing how the legal department's performing, the traditional pillars of legal practice, so precedent, expertise, and experience, are facing this transformation, this transformative potential of data. So the question is, how do we help?
And we can't have a discussion about data-driven innovation without talking about new technologies. And this GIF, I asked my team to help me with a GIF about AI, and they thought I meant a GIF created by AI. So that just so you know, that's why you get this freaky Will Smith eating spaghetti thing. Sorry about it. So LLMs and generative AI definitely now allow for some new ways of executing innovative ideas by allowing us to create structure out of unstructured data and providing us with new ways to interact with that data. And that's a lot of what our team has been working on with clients over the last several months. And I'll show you a few examples of sort of how we've made that happen. All right. So this is one example of how we have used these new technologies to extract deal points, right? So this, for example, is a design mock-up of a project we're working on with Latera, which may be fully released by the time this video comes out, and may look slightly different than this, just a disclaimer. This firm intelligence product allows firms to extract deal points from their deal data and query that data to gain crucial insights, like learning what's market for certain terms and certain types of deals. This has made the pool of data a lawyer can reasonably look at much, much larger. Like technically, you could have access to this data in the past. It would have taken an unreasonable amount of time. A lawyer could have maybe looked at a handful of deals that they may have thought of to determine what is market for a certain type, but now you can query an entire body of deal data. Another project that we were working on in the fall, we used an LLM to create structure out of data that lived inside court entries. So here you can see a super rough, low fidelity mock-up of an interface where on the left, the content from the docket entry is listed. On the right, the LLM is displaying its prediction as to how the data would be structured in the structure that we created. This interface also allows a human user to confirm the accuracy of the work. Prior to LLMs, we could have used a standard scraper that delivered the sort of paragraph to a human user, but the human user would have had to extract all of the data here. There's no consistency in how courts sort of write these blurbs, so a parser would be useless here. And so this would have been something that would be prohibitively time consuming. And so it allows this product to go forward, which is a product that alerts users when they have hearings coming up, that sort of thing.
And even without generative AI, new tech and technology can also really allow us to mine and visualize data more quickly. And this is an example. This dashboard actually started in 2021 as a static report that we published here at ORIC on our website and distributed to clients. And it's meant to capture, it's a European deal flow report. So it's meant to capture hundreds of terms from various tech deals that we have undertaken for our clients, and to share insights and data on those deal terms and trends with sort of the European VC market. And as you can imagine, when this was a static report, the creation of it was incredibly cumbersome. It was a manual process of collecting the deal data at the end of the year, entering all of that data into a spreadsheet, and then manipulating and analyzing and visualizing it in a Power BI for that static report. And since then, we've really transformed both the process and the output just simply by leveraging technology. So built a model to automate the data extraction from the deals, then created custom scripts to clean and classify that data in the way that we needed it to appear, to then allow us to flow it into a real-time dashboard for our lawyers to interact with. And as you can see, they can manipulate the data in real time. And then we're now in the process of layering on generative AI to that tech-enhanced system to really allow us to pull out and visualize even more nuances from the transactions. And for all of this, visualization is absolutely key.
All right, so data-driven innovation generally has been around for a while now. And so as a result, we've been using data in the implementation of products for some time. And data can be super powerful, as we know, but only if it's delivered to users in a way that's useful. So let's take a quick moment to have a chat about user experience. Our team has been working with the ORIC team to take a good hard look at all of the sources of data that all the law firm professionals across the firm have access to, and searching a look at how different personas interact with that data, what they actually use, what they really need, and how best to deliver it to them. The original state was a big giant portal party where information and data lived in many different web products across the ORIC digital ecosystem, all with different purposes, as well as a different look and feel. We began our work with a simple proof of concept, just around bringing data into one space for law firm partners in a clear interface. The main goal here was just the reduction of internal communications, typically delivered across emails, so to reduce distractions. You can see here, though, that the lawyer also has clear and easy access to some of their most important metrics. We're following this proof of concept up now with some in-depth research, talking to personas across the firm about pain points, how they use the existing online web properties, what data they need, importantly, what data they don't need, and how we can present that to them in a more usable way. And this becomes really important, when we are building a product for a client and we're attaching analytics onto the back end. We'll ask, what data do we want to track? And the answer we often get is like, all of it. And our response is usually like, you probably don't want all, because all is not helpful to you. Like, you want to actually define what you're trying to learn, and then we can track the data that will get you those things that you're trying to learn. All can be distracting, all can sort of obfuscate the things that you need. So it's important to think about how you're actually delivering data to the people within your firm.
So circling back to our dreaded ship metaphor, innovation without adoption is like having the fanciest boat at marina with absolutely no one to sail it. And measuring the impact of whatever solution or data-driven innovation that you've put in place is really critical to helping you drive adoption over time. And that itself is both an art and a science. Not surprisingly, data is key. Not only does it tell you whether and how people are interacting with a particular solution, it does allow you to glean other hidden insights that you may not have been anticipating. This image here is actually usage data of a solution that we rolled out within ORIC about a year ago, a little over a year ago. I mean, obviously it provides important information to us about the practice groups that are using the tool, the practice groups that aren't and maybe should be, which then allows us to really focus our change management energy in the right places. But we were also able to spot a spike in usage that you can see there at the start of the year around January 2023. And that spike correlates to when we pivoted from group trainings to one-on-one trainings. So this is an example of sort of those other hidden insights. And we've since carried through that one-on-one training approach throughout our adoption efforts. And you can see the numbers have continued to trend in that upward in a high fashion. And the key to all of this, any quantitative metric, of course, is being sure to design a mechanism for capturing this kind of data from the start. It is incredibly difficult to attempt to do a look back to grab this data after the fact. And quantitative data isn't everything when it comes to measuring the success of an innovation.
While we definitely have great access to quantitative metrics that tell a huge part of the story, sometimes you can only get the full picture by actually talking to humans. And I think a lot of times people avoid this step and deride it as anecdata. I'll tell you that here we approach research with a very data-forward mindset. When we are interviewing people, we are putting all of the notes that we have into a spreadsheet, and we're grouping all the information that we get into them by themes. And from there, we're deriving insights into our users and the products. So these insights are, in fact, data-driven, right? We talk users can and should be turned into real actionable insights. You'll be able to fill in a lot of the gaps that you can't get straight from qualitative metrics. So don't forget to go out there and actually talk to people about the products that you're building and the innovations that you're releasing.
That wraps up our portion of the show. We hope this was helpful, and we encourage you as you watch the next few sessions to keep in mind some of the topics we've covered and think about how those teams are bringing those forces to bear, how they're leveraging technology, how they're visualizing the data and the sort of user experience, and then how they're really measuring the success of what they've put in place. With that, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Nicole, welcome to our virtual stage. Thank you for a great presentation. Please, everyone, drop your questions in the chat, and please make sure to lead your question typing in capital letters, the word question. All right, and while folks start to put those in the chat, one thing I want to start with you, Kate. You said when you were defining data-driven innovation, you said it requires information, analytics, and technology. There is no easy button for any of those elements. But do you think, are we at a stage now where it's getting easier for us who are trying to move our organizations to those data-driven innovation type organizations? Is it getting easier for us to do that? Or is it still a very long maturation process and we have to go through each of the steps to get there?
Well, I think it's getting easier because there's tremendous attention on data. And I think that folks from all parts of the business understand the value of data. And so that makes it easier because there's buy-in. Data, I think, has proven its worth, but there is no easy button to get from here to there. So I mean, I do think it is a long process, requires investment, time, focus. It requires clarity from the start, or at least a strategy from the start. Nicole referenced this in her presentation, but being thoughtful about what it is you're trying to accomplish through a data exercise is critical. So easier, yes, because folks believe in it and are increasingly believing it, but there is no easy button.
We are going to jump to our next video. We're talking about the Goodwin Catalyst with Maria Corey.
I'm Maria Corey, the knowledge management lawyer for private M&A here at Goodwin. And I'm really happy to be here today to present our new initiative that we're calling Goodwin Catalyst. So this is a new approach that we're taking that uses the wealth of the deal data that we've gathered to provide some really innovative and data-driven solutions to our clients. And so without further ado, let's dig in. So the challenge that we were facing and what Goodwin Catalyst is designed to solve is that we have all this extensive information and wealth of knowledge in our deep deal terms database, but we weren't leveraging it to its maximum potential. We really had to figure out how we could distill the massive amounts of data that we have into these actionable business insights and also deliver those actionable business insights to our clients in a way that is easy for them to digest given their limited time and limited bandwidth. Our solution to these challenges has been Goodwin Catalyst. where our mission is to leverage our data and our unique team here at Goodwin to create some easily accessible content that resonates with our clients. And so with this initiative, it's really been about forming the right team, a team that can work together very well to both analyze the extensive deal data we have and distill it into data insights and to this easily consumable content for our clients. Our process for Goodwin Catalyst was to start with our private equity M&A group, for which we already have a great data machine up and running that gathers our deal data. We then established an insights committee that consists of some of our private equity M&A partners, our knowledge management team, me, our client development team, and our editorial teams. And this committee has regular meetings where we collaborate to analyze our data, and it also helps ensure that we have a steady flow of fresh content. We really rely on and leverage the varying expertise of the members of our committee to get the best mix of, the data analysis, the legal know-how, and the intriguing design and content. So the content and advice that we produce under Goodwin Catalyst is diverse and client-centric. It ranges from some succinct market term summaries that we'll provide on a one-to-one basis with our clients, as well as market trends and data analytics that we'll share more broadly on our website and through LinkedIn. This external content is really resonating with our clients, and it's also gaining some traction with some news outlets, which has significantly amplified our reach. Here are some examples of the external content that we produce through Goodwin Catalyst. You can see that we really leverage the use of intriguing data visuals to help the reader understand what the article is about before they even dive into the text. You can also see that we really leverage our LinkedIn networks to get the word out about our new insights. We really believe that one of the best ways to get to our target audience is to leverage the existing network of our attorneys. And so what are our lessons learned from our experience with Goodwin Catalyst so far? The first is to start with a narrow focus. To form the Client Insights Committee, we initially went too broad with partners ranging across geographies and across practice groups. That made it very difficult to have the type of conversation that you need to really get at and distill the market insights and trends that we're looking for in our data. Another thing that we've learned is that collaboration is really key to getting this done. It's so crucial that you leverage, the legal expertise of our lawyers, along with the ability of our knowledge management team to analyze and extract the data. And our marketing team is really critical in getting the message out to our clients. If we have the know-how and the analytics, but we don't have a way of getting it out to the clients in a way that matters to them and in a way that they'll consume, it really doesn't go anywhere. So the marketing team is a crucial partner in this Goodwin Catalyst initiative. The third learning is really just that, establishing a data-driven brand takes a lot of time and dedication. And so while we have had a lot of early success with Goodwin Catalyst and our private equity M&A group, it's going to take a long time for us to implement these learnings throughout other practice groups. And even within private equity M&A, it takes a lot of time and effort to keep this engine up and running. Thank you everyone for taking the time to be here with me today. I think one of the biggest takeaways here is really the power of storytelling through data. It's not just the message that matters, but it's also how you tell the message in an engaging way. The second takeaway here is thanks to ChatGPT and DALL-E for producing some of these awesome images that I've used in my PowerPoint. And with that, I'll see you all in the Q&A.
Hi, Maria.
Hello.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and congratulations. It looks like, Goodwin Catalyst has been incredibly successful.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm wondering if you could start by just telling us a little bit more about the data machine that's gathering this deal data, who's contributing to it, and where are you capturing all of this information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Anne Stemler and Patty Johansson actually gave a presentation on this at our last skills conference. So if you want to go check out their video from last year, you can. So what we've done is for private M&A in particular, we have a very detailed deal term survey that is housed within Foundation. And so after every private M&A deal that's closed within our private equity group and also tech M&A as well now, we have the senior associate on the deal go in and fill out the survey. They'll then send it to the partner for review and confirmation that the terms are correct. And then that data will all be housed within Foundation. And we use both Foundation and Tableau to kind of process and understand the data.
When you analyze deal trends for actionable insights, Dipti is asking, how do you deal with survivor bias? And also, if you're putting trend information out there, what's the risk, and how do you handle the risk that you're putting, clients in potentially awkward positions of, negotiating, off-market trends?
So that's interesting. It's something we consider with every, insight that we're publishing. We consider, will this impact not only our private equity clients, but sometimes our private equity clients have very different, results and terms than our tech M&A clients. And so how do we balance that? And I think, some of it is we pick and choose the data that we're putting out there, right? Like we make sure that the terms are, somewhat innocuous for our public facing data, something that's interesting, eye-catching, but not necessarily something that, could negatively impact any of our clients. We do have like much more detailed information that we provide to our clients on a one-to-one basis. And through that, like we can, have the conversation of, what you're asking for might not be market, or, and have that conversation then. And then I think, was there another part of that question? Or
I think that was it. So you said that, I know you've been doing a lot of one-on-ones with clients and sharing this information, and it sounds like this is really resonating with them. So what are some of the things that they're saying that, some of the, the attorneys that are presenting to them are saying when they're using this information from Goodwin Catalyst?
Yeah, so some of our attorneys, a lot of our attorneys are using this as, touch points with the clients. They're like, hey, we just put out this great article on earnouts. You had an earnout in your last deal, like, let's chat about it. And they're having some great responses from the clients in that respect. We're also getting a lot of engagement on our LinkedIn posts. Clients are reading these articles and enjoying them, posting positive comments and likes. And we're also getting some great feedback from the attorneys who are actually working on producing these pieces. So the way that we're engaging them is a little bit of a I'm telling you to please, be a contributor to this project for a year. We're expecting you to do 2 to 3 pieces. And so they don't have too much choice in the matter. But at the end of the year, we've only done 1 year so far. We had so many of them say like, hey, you know what? I actually really enjoyed doing this committee. Like, can I continue doing it, for the next year? So.
That's fantastic. I love to see that engagement, from our lawyers. Another question from the chat. You mentioned that news outlets are picking up the content that you're pushing out publicly. How are they using the materials that you're publishing?
So some of it is they've seen our content and reached out to us for one-on-one interviews with the partners who have published that content. We also had one piece that was just published in the real estate journal. And so it's been used in a couple different respects.
Exciting. All right, our poll question is going to be coming up in just a moment. So please, everyone, take a moment to respond to that. And while that's happening, we can answer one final question for us. So What are your plans for Goodwin Catalyst in 2024?
So we're keeping the ball rolling. We're continuing doing it with our US PEG M&A team. We have a new content team that's come on with a content schedule that has each of the 13 members producing 2 pieces of content each. And we're also rolling it out within our private equity M&A group worldwide. So we have people joining our team from the UK and from Germany and France as well.
Exciting. All right, I think we are out of time, Maria. There are a few other questions in the chat, so please check in there and respond to our audience. Thank you so much, and we wish you continued success with Goodwin Catalyst in 2024. And we are going to start our next video, Dynamic Dashboards, with Sunny Bain from DLA.
Hi, I'm Sunny Bain, and I'm the Director of Knowledge Technology at DLA Piper. I want to start with a quick background on our journey. Our KM group was only formed 4 years ago. At that time, we had no ownership of any legal practice platforms other than the experience database, which I had been managing along with our CRM system while in the marketing group. About 2 years ago, we were able to take over responsibility for legal practice tools from IT and various practice groups, and immediately we started assessing them. Are they even being used? Are they being used effectively? These were basic questions no one could answer. So we started collecting usage information and building out dashboards to aid our assessment and establish some baselines. Initially, through a third-party contractor in a product called ClickSense, until we could upskill ourselves and build out using Power BI, for which we had enterprise licensing. Whenever possible, we set up API connections or used Power Automate to pull in the data directly from the platform. To add context, such as user department, job title, we worked with IT to tap into our data lake for internal data. We started tracking our cloud-based systems through Research Monitor to record accurate session logins. And of course, applied taxonomies and focused on data hygiene to clean up and transform the data. And last but not least, we had discussions with the business stakeholders about what effective use means. In other words, how to measure ROI. The result today is that we can now monitor engagement with dozens of our tools, such as this example Kira report, and make informed decisions about where to focus our training and adoption efforts, how best to negotiate on contract renewals, and flag system issues. In the Kira example, we were able to determine we'd been paying for far larger data limits than we needed and negotiated significant cost savings when we last renewed. For another system with tiered pricing, we were able to turn on notifications when usage was nearing the next pricing level. On the education side, we tapped into our LMS through an API connection to get overall insight into both live and on-demand content engagement for our department. Next, we started looking for opportunities to leverage all this great data we've been collecting to the direct benefit of our lawyers and the firm. With our experience database, because submissions are so critical to its success, we built a user-friendly Power BI report to help our practice groups and marketing managers monitor matters not yet profiled, which they could easily filter: practice, sector, size of the matter, whether that's reviewing by hours worked or ranked by collections, and when the matter hit the target threshold. In this example, you see we also used Click to build a more detailed, sophisticated tracker that can kick off automated, personalized emails on the first Monday of each month with an attached spreadsheet of target matters not yet submitted that directly link back to our experience database. The response to this has been highly successful. At the request of our legal assistants, so they could help us with compliance, we then mirrored part of that report in Power BI and embedded it into a SharePoint support page on our firm intranet. We also knew we had lots of rich data in our experience database to which we now had an API connection. Could we then, say, for the M&A practice, get an interactive dashboard showing key deal points from the thousands of deals we've handled over the years, filterable by industry, deal size, buy versus sell side, public versus private company, etc., that the lawyers could use to see trends and inform their negotiations? Sure. And then let's do something similar for, say, real estate purchase and sale agreements and investment fund deals, and so on. The hard work of accessing and structuring that data had already largely been done, so creating custom views into that data turned out to be quite simple and effective, and a lot easier than repeatedly trying to train our lawyers how to query the source database or creating hundreds of saved searches for them. In another example, we were asked if we could help our practice groups with better information for making associate staffing assignments. They had basic information like practice group, title, and years in practice, but they were struggling with getting more context to assign the best qualified people or consciously upskill more junior lawyers. We'd already tapped into our finance data, so by tying time card data to matter experience and lawyer profiles, we were able to create a dashboard, this time in Click, that recalculates each lawyer's total career hours worked every time you add a new filter. So, like in this example, if you are looking for a junior associate with some experience in class action litigation for life science companies, licensed to practice in Florida or Georgia, it's a quick task to get that specific list of attorneys, see the number of hours worked on those specific types of matters, along with the list of those matters and the supervising partners. I feel like we're just starting to tap into our potential options, and I'm excited to continue expanding our offerings. We recently hired someone with UX and graphic design skills to further enhance our reports. And we have big plans as we head into 2024.
Hey, Sunny, so good to see you.
Hey, Tanisha.
But I think you're giving a lot of us dashboard envy here. This was fantastic. All right, let's start with a couple of questions. Let's see, we've got Amal from Mayor Brown asked, the dashboard that you showed for Kira, how much of that data came from Kira versus how much of it were you extracting from somewhere else?
Most of it actually came directly from Kira, except on the user interface. So understanding who the users are in the system is really thanks to Research Monitor. So for those of you who are Remo subscribers, I think the biggest lesson learned for me was I wish I had turned that tracking on all of our systems on way earlier than we did, because that's where you can really get the insights into who's using the system, but how the system is being used, we got directly out of Kira's API.
Thank you. So you showed us quite a few dashboards. Which of all of the projects that you've done so far are you most proud of to date?
That attorney availability portal, for sure, because that was a direct result of working with our pricing team. Each of our practice groups have directors that run the business and staffing of all of that. And so this was just data that we had around, and being able to find that and leverage that in a way that really impacts the business directly was something I'm super proud of.
Right, fantastic. So you mentioned that you have some big plans for 2024. What's in there? Maybe some client-facing things?
Yeah, and I found that last session super interesting. Good job, Goodwin, because I think it raises some good questions about the sensitivity of doing this. I think I showed the M&A dashboard, and of course you have to block out so much of the data. Sorry. But I think right now our attorneys are just using that for one-on-one conversations with their clients. So I think we'll definitely be looking at if there's ways for us to leverage that more publicly facing. But I'm really excited about the generative AI and it's not even really generative, the AI new sort of environment we're in here, and how we can use that to extract all of these details. And I found the conversation with Kate and what they're doing at Oric super interesting. So we'll be doing a lot of exploring with that this year to see how we can structure our data and get it in so we can leverage it this way.
Yeah, I think data extraction, is going to be one of the most interesting things that I think that a lot of us who are working in the experience field are trying to tackle this year. So definitely some ideas for content for next year.
Yeah.
Some other questions. Have you considered plugging in Power BI reports to your website for real-time updates on client-facing content?
We have not, but that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Excellent. So there's another question that's a little bit more detailed about the experience data that you have.
Yeah.
So there is an assumption that you're profiling the matters themselves. And the question is the experience plus the hours based on the profile of the matter rather than the task codes. Is that right?
Yeah, Hunter, that's exactly right. And but that's largely coming from business intake. That is not anything that we are having to supplementally add. And we did a tremendous amount of education with our attorneys and our secretaries around making sure that, and have all kinds of processes to try to make sure that we've got good area of law codes and sector classifications and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Another thing I was curious about, you talked in the beginning, there was a tool that you were using, ClickSense, and you actually used a third party, external party to help you build those before you transitioned to your team using Power BI internally. Are you still in that hybrid mode, or are you trying to transition everything to your in-house team and using Power BI?
No, we're definitely still in that. And I think for when it's doing more sophisticated calculations like that, I think it's a stronger tool than Power BI. The challenge is just because we're a big Microsoft shop, we have Power BI for everybody. We have limited licensing on Click. So it depends on how much we want to open this up for a bigger group of people. Impacts a lot of that too.
Understand. All right, our poll question is going to be coming up in just a minute. There it is. And while everyone takes a moment to respond to that, just want to say, do you have any final words of wisdom for anyone out there who's starting down this path and really wants to, to up their dashboard game?
Yeah, I realize that we're a larger firm, so I'm feel really blessed that we have a dedicated person to help work on this. But I think, and we heard it from Nicole, there's lots of great third-party affordable resources out there. And I'm a big fan of just get started anywhere you can. So that would be my advice.
Fantastic. Sunny, thank you so much for sharing today and giving us some great use cases. Really appreciate it. All right, we are going to move on to our next video coming up. We're going to talk about how to tell your success story using KPIs and data analytics with BCLP.
Hi, I'm Judy.
And I'm Hayley.
And last year at this skills conference, we had the pleasure of presenting on our knowledge search platform, BCLP Discover, that we launched to our firm in January 2023.
This year, we're here to talk to you about life after launch. So what happens in the 12 months after Discover went live, and how we used data analytics to track the progress of Discover's adoption throughout the firm, but also as a promotion tool.
But before we do that, Colette Schuler in our team is just going to give you a quick recap on what BCLP Discover is.
BCLP Discover is our firm's integrated smart search system. The platform itself is built using iManage's Insight Search and contains our firm matter history, legal documents, knowledge resources, closing books, and filed pleadings over the past 10 years. The platform is supplemented behind the scenes by a number of fully automated and semi-automated workflows that pull data and content from other systems in the firm and external data sources.
After we launched Discover, the Central KM team embarked on a rigorous adoption and promotion plan that was almost entirely data-driven. We knew from previous experience that it wasn't enough just to put out some firm-wide communications and invite some people to training and hope for the best.
So at the same time as launching Discover, we built Power BI dashboards that gave us comprehensive instant access about how well Discover is being used and the relating KM processes. Colette, tell us more about these.
Here's an example of one of our Discover-related dashboards. This one tells about our members' search habits. It tells us how many people are using Discover to search for items. It also tells us how many searches they have done over a given period. It tells us what they are searching for and the search terms they are using. It also tells us what content is most popular with our users. We also have other dashboards that tell us how many lawyers are tagging documents and submitting them as a knowledge resource to Discover, how many lawyers are spending time on KM activities and initiatives, how many closing binders have been submitted to Discover, and by what offices and practice groups. We also measure matters profiled in Foundation and attendance levels of KM training sessions.
We've used the data in these dashboards in 5 ways. Firstly, of course, we use them to measure the ROI for every element of BCLP Discover. Are people actually using the tool and the underlying processes? Was it worth the investment? We run quarterly reports on the activity across Discover and analyse these to understand its ROI.
Secondly, we use the data to measure against KPIs. At the start of each year, we set ourselves ambitious goals in the Central KM team for adoption and usage across the whole Discover initiative. Some of these goals are co-opted by our knowledge lawyers and form part of their career objectives. That way, we have a shared incentive to get people trained and using the tools. We use the Power BI dashboards to monitor our progress against these goals, and our quarterly reports are circulated widely so people feel invested and there is complete transparency on performance.
Thirdly, we use data to give us real-time feedback on where our adoption efforts are paying off and where they're not. For example, we soon realised large demos in the US didn't work. Although one-to-ones take longer, they result in 10 times the amount of traction. So we moved to a programme of shorter one-to-one sessions targeting key influencers.
We also use the data to help us spot user trends and behaviours. For example, we noticed that the search terms people used were very often vague. We made sure to include more time in our demos on how to compose search terms and combine these with filters.
And finally, we use the metrics to share our success internally. We tell key stakeholders, even our co-chairs, how we are doing. We also use the stats in demos to lawyers to lend credibility to what we're showing them.
So what are our lessons learned? Firstly, empower yourselves with Power BI. Initially, we had to rely heavily on our tech team to build the Power BI dashboards that we needed. And to be honest, we struggled sometimes to get their time and attention. So what we ended up doing is getting them to teach some of our KM team members how to build and maintain these dashboards ourselves. That has made life so much easier.
Secondly, think ahead about what metrics you want to measure over time and not just at the point of launch. For example, you're likely to want to know not just how many users you have, but how many times they've gone back to use a tool. Year 1 for us was really all about awareness, but going into year 2, it's now becoming about repeat usage, and we need a different set of metrics to track that.
Thirdly, metric-driven goals are not familiar to most KM team members or lawyers, but they are really useful. They can be difficult to set if you have no baseline, so use pilots without metrics at first to help you decide what can be your realistic goals when you do full launch.
So to sum up, in a world of rapidly changing technology, it can be tempting to make assumptions about what it is that lawyers really care about and value in their daily work.
What we've found is having comprehensive, accurate data about Discover and its related processes gives us a much better grounding to make decisions about how we improve it and what we supplement it with.
And as a result, we're in a much better position to advise our firm in future investments in this area and to really understand our performance as a KM team.
Welcome to the Q&A stage. It is great to have you back this year to see what's been happening with Discover. Oh my gosh, it sounds like it's been a really exciting year for you all. All right, we are going to jump into our questions. So we have a question about iManage and with respect to Discover from Sarah from Stradley Ronan. She said that you mentioned that iManage with respect to Discover, that her impression would be that you would need an independent connector or indexer to federate all the data that you're pulling in from your various systems, something like 3E. What are you using to do this?
No, we don't need that. So all of she's right. Discover is based on the iManage product insight. All of the data that we extract out of that goes back into our MDD, our data lake, and we are pulling that straight into Power BI. There is no third-party product involved.
Thank you. So I want to jump in. I want to talk a little bit more about, how you started using data to drive your implementations and adoption compared to some of your previous approaches. So can you tell us what the biggest differences have been?
Yeah, I mean, as Kate Orr used the kind of boat analogy of, trying to do things without, if you don't use data, you're just basically sailing blind. I completely agree. It is like the blindfold has been taken off, and instead of knowing how your adoption process is going, down the line or after you've done so much effort, you're getting real-time information on a daily basis. So we can keep moderating our approach. We can see firsthand where things are paying off and where they're not. And as we said in the video, one of the greatest kind of insights was around people's search behavior. And it was really great to be able to go respond to comments like, I couldn't find what I wanted, to be able to say, well, I looked and I can see what you used to search for that particular document. You should have tried doing this, or you could have done this, or maybe re-educate them on some of the search term prefixes that you can use, like title, etc. So that has been really useful.
Yeah, and it sounds like David Hobby from Goodwin had a similar question along those lines, asking if you considered doing individual user training based on for instance, for
yeah, we did. We have, and again, you have to be kind of conscious about how you propose that, but often we've just dropped a line saying how you're getting on with Discover, and if someone says, oh, actually I wasn't able to see, then we go on to that, guys. But Colette has been leading our effort on a lot of one-to-ones in the US, and basically doing exactly that, trying to get that one-to-one time, and either using that person's own search experience to re-educate them, or using other people's search experience to try and ward off poor behavior before it starts, or poor search technique.
So other than the poor search terms and techniques, were there any other surprises that you found in the data?
I think one of the bigger surprises for me from a metric and analytics standpoint was being able to track and see who's actually using the platform, who's accessing it, how often. One of an interesting piece of analytics was, why did somebody try it once but not come back to it? That gave us a great opportunity to reach out to that person and say, hey, I see you've used it. Did you have any issues? Do you have any questions? Let's sit down and talk through it. I think the other surprise for me has been that one-on-one. Like Haley said, it's time consuming, but it's just so important. That to me has been the biggest adoption opportunity we have had, has been the one-on-one. So yeah, it's been great reaching out to them. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we also, in the same vein as seeing only the one-timers, we were also able to spot the potential champions, the ones that keep using it. And they didn't necessarily know that they were the most prolific user in their office until we looked at the data and said, would you mind, doing a little talk to your group, or sending an email around saying, that you've been using Discover and you like it a lot. And, most of the time people are very happy to do that.
Fantastic. So I'm curious, just about building out the various dashboards and the analytics that you were capturing. So your team had to learn how to use Power BI to do all of this. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience, teaching your team how to use Power BI and starting to, to leverage it to create all of this information?
Yeah, I mean, what we did is, so we have a database team in the firm, but they sit centrally within our technology department. And as you said again, at the first, we had to just solely rely on them. And every other business development, business services group in the firm is wanting dashboards. And so we have to share their time. We got them to teach our team, so that we knew it was going to be, that we could recreate what they would have done, what their approach was, and what our internal firm's configuration was. And I'll be honest, in our team, we've got people from a mix of backgrounds. Some are from a legal background, some are from a technology background. So, the way people grasp things differently, but we had a couple of our team members who just, really found it quite natural and have really embraced that kind of analytics side, and have been able to self-serve and build out the dashboards for us on an ongoing basis. And that, yeah, it's really changed how frequently we can start producing these dashboards. We've still got loads more that we want to do.
It sounds like, I feel like, this whole segment on, data-driven innovation, the use of dashboards, analytics. We've heard a lot about Power BI. I think this is going to be the future for a lot of us. Let's see, we have just 1 minute before our poll is going to come up. So I'm just going to pose a final question as that pops up. So it sounds like, the use of these dashboards has just really impacted the way that you're making decisions about, the tools that you're using in your department, how you're driving adoption. And I'm wondering, has it started to, to reach other parts of the firm as well? Are they starting to take this more data-driven approach?
Yeah, I think, we've heard today the importance of data in every aspect of a law firm's delivery. It's certainly something that every firm has to take seriously in all aspects. I loved listening to the presentations earlier today about using it to gain insights, and it's certainly something that we are really interested in as well. So yeah, there's many different use cases. I think aggregating data for lawyers is going to be a really crucial part. Again, we heard today, you can have a portal party, which is actually going too far and becoming unhelpful. So one of the things that we've had to consider is consolidation of dashboards as well, and making them easier and more accessible, not having too many siloed dashboards.
Great. I think that is going to wrap up our session. Haley, Colette, thank you so much for sharing. Looking forward to hearing what's next with Discover. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the morning here at Skills. I think we didn't have a chance to figure out how to work Argle-Bargle into the conversation yet, but maybe that will come this afternoon. So now we are going to move next into our break, and we're going to have our breakout rooms. At the close of our breakout rooms, we're going to ask everyone, please come back to the session. We'll just have a couple of minutes with some announcements and talk about what's happening in the afternoon. And for those who are on the live stream, you are welcome to come back at 1:15 and join us for our live stream and our interactive lunch. And for others, we will be picking back up again at 1:45 after our lunch break. So please enjoy the breakout rooms, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
So this is officially our lunch break. So feel free to turn off your camera and grab your food. And we are going to, as we said, invite the people who are on the website only. So if you go to the website after the event and you click on the 2024 prior event, you get to see all the sessions from today, the pre-recordings, and the 4 sessions that we're going to hear from now. And we're going to start with Casey. Casey, do you want to tell us in 1 minute what your presentation is about?
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Casey Rauschenberg. I'm the experience manager at Frost Brown Todd. So you can check out our online skill session to see how our Frost Brown Todd data and innovation team gamify the change management of our experience management database, which is Foundation. So we created what we are calling an experience week, where we got everybody involved. That included in-office workers, remote workers, and everybody at every level. We wanted to jumpstart our data collection, so that was really one of our big goals of that week. And we wanted to show people that not only can data be fun, but that everybody plays a role with having better data, and that it's not just the data team that does data. So we all can contribute. And so that's what our session's about, is gamifying that, making it a little bit fun for everybody at the firm. And so if anybody wants to discuss after you've had a chance to watch the online session, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Hey, everyone, I'm Naveen Pai, the Chief Knowledge Officer at Gunderson Detmer. And, we've been working with Dashboard Legal for a little more than a year now and are still actually very excited about it. It's classic project management, but done right and built for attorneys at firms. So as an example, where do attorneys spend time, right? In email and in their DMS. And so the two things that Dashboard Legal integrates with are email and your DMS. And so, that's just one example. The video that that Matt worked on and we helped with, provide some real world experiences of our attorneys. And we'd urge you to check it out. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Ab, can you tell us about the session you were involved in?
Yeah. I'm going to speak on behalf of India because she has just gone on maternity leave. But the session that we have focuses on legal project management, but really it's about what is the connect between the innovation team who do a lot of the horizon scanning in terms of looking at the problems to be solved, very similar to what Naveen just mentioned, in terms of how do we get lawyers to organize the work, to manage the work, get out of Excel, Word, and Outlook, and the DMS into some way of actually using modern tools to do that. And the session talks a lot more about how do you get stakeholders involved. So innovation team is excited, they head to us and they pass on the project to a specialist team. How do you then take it so it's used every single day by partners, by associates, and other members of the legal team? So go check it out. If you have questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Ab, and stay with us, please. We're going to ask you and Ron now to tell us about the survey.
Ab, why don't you go first? You did the legacy questions we've been asking for many years.
That's right. I was thrilled to do this because I read the survey every year, or as many years as I've been able to find. So this survey looked at over 500 different respondents that answered, all of you that answered the questions ahead of skills. And it basically asked, what did you spend time on last year? What will you be spending time on this year? And you should definitely read the survey. No surprises, AI was very high on everyone's hit list, both for last year and this year. And Ron will talk a lot more about that. There was a deeper dive into that. What I wanted to tackle in maybe 30 seconds is what didn't come through in the data, but was certainly included in the comments. So a lot of you left comments on the type of work and what you're focusing on. So 3 standout things. One, there seems to be a proliferation of additional innovation teams being set up. So those that were innovation members reporting into IT, KM, or elsewhere, there were at least 3, I counted, if not more, individuals celebrating that they now have a team, a budget, and a function to manage, which is great to see. 2, the amount of time being spent on data and analytics, contrary to what we're hearing, went down. That doesn't mean there was less of that being done. Probably, as I think Ron and I discussed, it likely means that as people were focusing on Gen AI, machine learning, and generally other areas of AI, it probably meant that those individuals were being pulled into that as well. So it'll be interesting to see that, because certainly the presentations that I've seen so far very heavy on data analytics and presentation of the outcomes. And lastly, certainly the amount of focus on IT, risk, cybersecurity, IG, that went down as we think about sort of things firms are looking to focus on in 2024. Again, the assumption here is there are specialist teams that are being pulled in to lead that charge. Not to say that KM and innovation leaders will not be involved in that, but they will be supporting that rather than sort of taking that on board. Because of course, information governance, security risk is probably more important than ever. So I wanted to at least share those key takeaways. And yeah, I'll pass on to Ron, who did a deeper dive on the AI part.
Great, thanks, Ab, and thank you for doing the tag analysis. Those of you who are participating in this survey will have observed that we did add a whole new session this year on generative AI. And what stood out for me is 2/3 of the firms that responded, and there were 141 that when we deduplicated for multiple respondents from firms, 2/3 of 140 firms are either piloting or have deployed generative AI. And the other standout finding, and this is actually not in the report, is, and I'm looking at another screen where I actually have the data, there are 3 firms that are piloting or deployed 3 different models, and also about 15 firms that are looking by piloting or deploying form models. So there's a lot of activity. And what I can add, again, that was not in the published survey is both through meetings like this and for some research I'm doing for Gartner, I've talked to 10 large law firms. This is all real. It doesn't mean adoption is widespread. It's varied by firm, but I've not seen another technology take root so quickly. So I think we're in exciting times, promising times, but the use cases still remain to be determined. And you can look at the survey for that. And I will turn it back to the Master of Ceremonies, Oz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are now going to invite those people who have open positions to tell us in 30 seconds what are they looking to hire. So anyone who's interested will get to know. And we'll go by the order that I see here. So Sergey Polak.
All right, I wasn't expecting to go first. I am trying to start, or not trying, but I am starting a technology innovation group here at Ropes and Gray. Right now it's a department of one, me, and I have an open position. So I need to write a job description still, but I am looking for somebody to help me with technology innovation here at the firm. Right? I'm looking for a technologist, I would say a tech geek who has some experience with AI, certainly, with development, with researching new technology, and ideally also being able to talk to lawyers and know how lawyers work and think.
Hi, this is David Hobby. This is about the job openings, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we have an opening in the knowledge management team for director of knowledge management positions. Position is either remote or in one of the cities where we have our offices, and it would help with a lot of things, but including with a strong focus on our technology for the transactional practice, our stack of technologies.
Great. And
it's the director of it's the director of KM technology role.
Thank you.
Right. And Patty, is that the same role you want?
Same role.
Okay. So we're going to Al. Are you ready?
Yeah, sorry about that. So we've got two roles we're hiring for in innovation at Norton Rose in Toronto or anywhere in Canada. One is manager of change management and adoption. The other one is an AI developer.
Great. Haley Harris, DCLP.
Yes, hi. Yes, we are looking for a knowledge systems engineer in the US. Ideally Chicago, but we will accept applicants from any place where we have an office. And they will be working in the knowledge management team, the central KM team, which I head up, and they'll be responsible for technical support and maintenance development of all of our key knowledge management systems, including foundation.
Great. So I can tell you that Nisha is looking to hire a capital markets KML. So if you are, and it is going to be in the New York City office. Tiffany.
Hi, we're looking to hire in-house for a legal operations manager, but their focus is primarily on technology and knowledge management.
I would like to ask a question, and I mentioned this in our breakout session. I'm getting a lot of pushback from management about the fact that if somebody uses generative AI to begin a document, no matter what it is, maybe it's just some kind of a brief to clients, that it must be cited, which is interesting. And I wanted to get a sense from this group as to how prevalent that is. If you're only keeping, why is it different from a young associate doing it? You still have to read the whole thing. You still have to stand beside it, behind it. You still have to take responsibility for it. But I think that citing it carry a stigma. So I'm wondering how people feel about that.
Todd, I've had some of those conversations on the UK side about in the context of litigation and whether your submissions and whether you need to declare you've used it. And I'm very firmly of the view, but not the only view, of the firmly view that what is the point of the declaration? It doesn't change your accountability for the output of what you produce and the need to verify that and stand behind it. And it's not a plea in mitigation if you screw up. So I'm not personally of the view that there should be any need to, and it's certainly not yet been adopted as a position in the rules. But I know there's a very counter view to that.
We've made that our internal policy for the use of AI, that we have to declare it in any way in any part of the project, which is, I think, from some sort of purist view on plagiarism and whether your work is derivative, may be nice, but the way law firms have worked for so long with how we use each other's information, it feels rough.
What is the logic for the firms that are requiring disclosure? If I infer the logic, then you would need to disclose if a paralegal contributed, or
Right.
if someone without a JD. I'm not sure I understand the logic. Is there logic?
I'm not. Hey, Ron, I'm not going to argue necessarily for it, but it's an issue we've been thinking about, and I think the logic that I found compelling is one that Sarah hinted at too, which is, I think there's a risk that is not. So let's say there's a paralegal or a first year or someone who contributed to something. They're not going to make something. I mean, they're not going to. So as far as to make something up, I take it. I'm convinced we're all responsible for our own product, so that shouldn't drive this. You should be responsible for the accuracy, but it's the plagiarism thing. I think it's that potential risk that it's going to pull something, and I just don't think many of us are comfortable with the technology yet to know exactly whether we hear that it shouldn't do that, but I've seen some cases that look like it is doing that, and at least if there's a human who originated the generation of the content, they wouldn't do that, or they would tell you would think.
I think if you think, Ron, of the world of deep fake, right? So when you use technology to represent something that otherwise you would expect a human to produce, so it's kind of partially the ethical aspect of that, and there is the comment about originality. So same from the art world. So we just want to know that you weren't the sole creator of this.
And even beyond that, one of the things that we're dealing with is the idea that we need to get our clients' consent before using any sort of GPT technology, and certainly before sharing information.
The problem with that is where we define what is AI. I mean, your spell check on your computer is using transformers now to make sure that your sentence completion is better. I know that's a facetious point, but also it does become a definitional problem of where are we saying we are and aren't using a technology that has a purposive issue that we need to disclose.
That's my concern, because unless you're limiting it to generative AI, which I'm assuming you are, that you're declaring that. But even there, I'm with Ron. I don't even see where the plagiarism comes in, unless you're dealing with copyrighted.
So my child, who is 14, got caught using ChatGPT to write a paper, and he got ChatGPT to generate a definition of plagiarism. And according to ChatGPT, as he was trying to justify himself to me, that he wasn't using any individual's work, and therefore he wasn't stealing anything. And we had to have a big discussion about whether all those individual works collectively that moved into that space was in fact stealing something. But yes, he used the GPT to help arm himself.
Okay, but that's a little different, I think, than what we're talking about here, particularly if we're talking about draft me a document, right? A contract type. Like you said, we've all plagiarized each other. Nobody created the document that GAI is producing.
Patrick, I go back to what Generative said, and why a book is a technology. So if I go back to when I was law school, whereas there's the transition from print to online, I mean, I don't understand the principal distinction between, okay, a book doesn't write text for you, but to Generative point, what does it mean to plagiarize? So
no, but I think the thing is if you quoted from a book, you would quote it and you would put a footnote. And the concern that some people have, and I don't know how it's going to play out, is that Gen AI generated content, you may not know to what source you should be ascribing like a footnote.
Okay, that's fair.
It's hard
But if it's a purchase agreement, if it's a purchase agreement, why do you care?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
saying.
If anyone does care, that's not an argument I'm making. I mean, people have been cutting and pasting from each other's acquisition agreements and.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Where is your plagiarism fear? Is it like same with the case? I would look the case up. I wouldn't just take it for granted, right? Because of the whole hallucination thing. So,
but just I'm just throwing out another thing. In writing a brief, you would cut and paste from your colleague's brief, but then you would check the cases and make sure that they haven't been overturned, and you would do that. And you wouldn't cite, oh, this is from Nick Pryor's brief from 2015.
Right.
You would just.
I knew you'd been stealing from me, Patrick. I knew it all along. But I think
there's such a range of how you use generative.
But it's the means by which you get there that we don't need to declare or disclose. I wouldn't have thought. Sorry, Gwyn.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say there's such a range of how you use generative AI that, I think it would be hard to have sort of a blanket policy that requires that type of citation. You can be using it for something that's factual, and you're going to have a much different risks around hallucinations depending on whether you're using a sort of general open tool or if you're using something that's grounded, like a co-counsel. But if you're using it for just like, help me brainstorm, help me get past the blank page, help me sort of think of how to string these words together, it just is such a huge spectrum of how you're using it that it is really hard to say that you need to have that citation for anything that uses it. And I feel like these types of things, when people bring this up, this is kind of your entree to the conversation on like, let's talk about how we're using it and what your concern is and how these technologies actually work. Because I think this all comes back to the responsibility of the lawyer.
Right.
But we've had clients come up to us and say, are you using it? And I think it's a little foolish to say, no, we've not even considered it. So we've been actually honest and have had conversation. Would you like us to use it?
I think you do have to have the conversation with your client if they if that's what they want.
Would you like us to use it? And if so, what are the boundaries of that usage? And I think it would be amazing to have like a laundry list given to the client that, do you want us to use it for this, and not this?
I think there's a difference between answering the question honestly when you're asked. So if someone comes up to me, or if the court says, oh, by the way, did you use any GAI and how, I would be obligated to answer truthfully. I would want to answer truthfully. That's different than saying every time I create something, I have to put a stamp on it that says, warning, I use GAI, because that sends a signal that it's not trustworthy. And I don't think that's true.
I'll say as a client, I think companies are all over the place right now in terms of just everyone on this call is in terms of how people are feeling about AI and their comfort with it. I certainly, as a client, wouldn't want to look at a laundry list of all the different ways you're using it. I want you to use it in every possible way to make things faster and easier. But for me, what matters is my confidential information or my proprietary information going into a shared data set.
Right.
And as long as it's not, go for it. But I know I'm not, my company is very, very comfortable with AI, and that's not true for every company.
Lori, I talk in my day job at Gartner, I'm talking to a lot of clients, and this issue is coming up. I think your position 2 years from now, that will be everyone's position except a few backward companies. It's hard to understand why a client wouldn't do that. As long as the privacy is there, it's like saying, oh no, don't use that word processor. Just find a secretary and take dictation. No one's saying that. I don't see how this is any different.
Yeah.
One thing to consider.
Have this conversation.
One thing to consider is that the way things are moving. A lot of the technology vendors are incorporating, integrating these LLMs and these, generative AI tools into everything. So at some point, it will just be technology, and it'll be like disclosing that you're using Word to write a document. So even though it might be the case where today we can safely say we've used it or we haven't, maybe in a couple months from now, nobody's going to be able to be in the position to be actually knowledgeable about if it wasn't used, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Team wrote in the chat that people should say when they don't use it, just like artists sign their original work. That would be, it's mine. I thought about it myself. So thank you. We've got 6 minutes left. Anyone want to bring any other topic?
I just want to say I would rather read generative AI's writing than many lawyers' original writing.
Is anyone? I don't want to keep on this if there's another path that people want to take, but the follow-on question is, first, I concur with virtually everything that's been said here in the last 5 minutes. Are any of you doing anything more about like using plagiarism software on? And I'm not talking about contracts. Okay, I'm talking about I don't know, client alerts, memos, things like that, or are we just going to go for it and just say what the hell? Maybe people copied. If someone's busted for copying something inadvertently, then we'll just go what?
So Patrick, we use plate check, and all of the content that we publish outside. Whatever we receive and are planning to edit out and use, we make sure none of it is plagiarized. And once in a while, something comes up just because it's such an oft-repeated regulation. But yes, we've got a policy around plagiarism check.
I've talked with many Silicon Valley people that are doing these plagiarism check and GPT detectors, and almost all of them agree that it's really impossible to do such things with high accuracy. And so really the most of them go by, humans are very jagged, very random, whereas the large language models are very smooth. So most of them are saying, is the writing very smooth? If it's very smooth, then it's more likely to be GPT generated. But then a human that writes in very predictable text will also be smooth. So all that's to say is that these plagiarism tech detectors really don't do well.
I'm not going to quote who told it to me, so it won't be clear which of my college-age children has said it, but they will go after ChatGPT and break the English a little bit to make it sound like their own.
There are also tools that will rephrase it for you. There are websites that will do that. Right. And by the way, I don't know if you all know that the winner of the Sony photo contest last year, he submitted the photo as original, but then disclosed that it was co-created with generative AI, and that he still won.
Yeah, that was the woman, right? The picture of the yeah, right, that one. Yeah, it's interesting. I just wonder how these things are going. I wonder whether we're all going to start going in and like adding typographical errors to our emails.
Nobody tell this to my kid, who I'm trying to get to stop doing this stuff.
In the hopes that he will actually read them, because I'm going to get to the point pretty soon that if I have any email that doesn't have any grammatical or typo errors, I'm not going to read it.
Well, someone has also said that hackers intentionally put in typos because they're looking for people that fall for that.
All I can say is my writing is smooth, and I don't have typos or grammar errors, and I am not an AI.
Prove it.
But you can actually inject a prompt. In the prompt, you can actually tell it to make mistakes for you. So it's not going to be a good criteria for decision making as far as deciding not to read an email.
So I'm going to have to go into it.
Like you.
I'm going to have to put in my prompt, make me sound stupider than I am.
You can also provide examples of your own writing to teach it to write like you.
The point with plagiarism checkers is not to find It's not that they find every instance of plagiarism, but you can dial it down. So you can say there can't be more than 5% or 10%. It's virtually impossible to have 0%.
And with that, Nick, I think we are almost ready for you.
I'm ready when you guys are. Hi, everyone. So I'm Nick Pryor, Director of Knowledge and Innovation at Freeths. Here in the UK, it's now the evening. So I've got a drink to accompany me through. So everybody on the UK side that stuck with it, I thought of having a drink every time somebody said generative AI, and I'm glad I backed out from that. Otherwise, it would be a wreck for the next hour and a half. So I've got the section here where we're talking about adoption. It was a really popular topic last year, and it's evergreen. Obviously, a lot of people upvoted this. So the first presentation we've got here is from Jem and Angela from Baker McKenzie. So please take it away.
My name is Jem Uchan, and I'm an Innovation Product Manager for Baker McKenzie.
And I am Angela Cairn, Senior Manager in Practice Group Solutions.
Over the course of the next 12 minutes, we will walk you through everything we know about adoption.
Our role centres around providing our lawyers with the best tools available and dedicated to implementing innovative solutions to elevate their capabilities and enhance overall performance. Against our best efforts, there's a pressing issue we can't ignore. A considerable number of our licensed and in-house solutions consistently fall short of meeting our adoption goals. Why? This key question invites us to rethink our methods and identify the main causes impeding our adoption goals from being achieved.
Well, there are many possible reasons, or rather excuses, that we often hear. Some of them are on this slide. The first one is lawyers are resistant to change. This is a common stereotype that portrays lawyers as conservative, traditional, and risk-averse. We think this is unfair towards lawyers. Most humans have this inherent inertia and distrust against change. Another one is our lawyers are too busy to adopt new technologies. A third one is our firm's culture is not hospitable to change. This is a more systemic excuse that points to the organizational and institutional barriers that may hinder innovation. Bonus points for a quote about culture eating strategy for breakfast. Another one is pressure to build time is preventing our attorneys from engaging with tech. This is a more subtle excuse that reflects the underlying incentive structure of the legal profession. Lawyers are rewarded for the amount of time they spend on a case, not for the value they deliver or the outcome they achieve. The final box is designated for the most recent reason/excuse you've come across. If you have encountered a good one lately, share it in the chat for others to see as well.
So what have we tried and failed? What we are sharing here encapsulates years of trial and error, distilling the standout areas that have proven effective for us. These highlights represent our ongoing journey, a dynamic, evolving process rather than an exhaustive list. So starting with taking those bold actions of kicking down the doors to signal urgency and compel that change within the organisation.
The level of urgency we need cannot be achieved with incremental tech developments. The threat should be existential to the firm to generate the urgency we need. We are seeing more of this with Gen AI, but this is hardly applicable to your everyday transaction management or e-billing platform.
So what about our communicating strategy of employing those casual settings like tea time discussions to effectively convey those ideas and build that collective agreement?
Yeah, this is great in creating consensus, but we have to be deliberate in our interactions with our populations. Otherwise, we will waste time and resources. For context, Baker McKenzie has a headcount of 13,000. That's a lot of T's. We need to be very specific in our targeting and what we want when we are interacting with our attorneys.
So securing that senior partner endorsement to drive the organizational tone and the commitment.
This principle is relevant to companies with a clear chain of command and leadership structure. Law firm partners operate as semi-autonomous business units. In all successful digital business transformations, CEO of the company, not even the vice president, the CEO commits and personally takes charge of the change effort. Otherwise, it does not work. You can see how this is different than a managing partner or a senior partner putting their approval on legal tech, but delegating the adoption effort to others.
Showcasing our success stories. We're using those appealing success stories as the promotional tools to encourage that broader adoption.
Success stories are great in generating exposure. Everybody loves them. However, most attorneys still require well-known and trusted colleagues' positive recommendation before testing a product. In and of itself, they're not enough. Neither are trainings.
And a personal favourite of mine is using those regional meetings to present interactive showcases of our legal tech portfolio. Our perception is that they'll immediately start using the technology as soon as they return to the office.
Unfortunately, that is not the case. This is similar to the one above. Vast majority of the population cannot be convinced to test or adopt a legal tech product based off of a conversation with you as in a non-attorney tech person who they don't know and don't trust. So what has worked for us so far?
What has worked? So we focused our efforts on top income generating practice groups. And within those, we targeted the low profit. We specifically targeted the low profit practice groups. Our aim was to prioritize teams with a high revenue but low profitability, as they have the most significant potential to positively influence the firm's bottom line. The low profit practice groups are also more inclined to experiment technology, as they already have a strong motivation to enhance their profitability.
Yeah, and once we know our target group, we next focus on a product. We should not throw technology at a problem, we should go people, process, tech. But even when we know we need to deploy tech, not all tech are created equal. Some spread better than others. Where possible, we opt for technologies with a high adoption rate and a broad usage in the industry. Bill Henderson has a worksheet on how we can grade a product's potential for widespread adoption. You can find the worksheet in the slide deck together with its source. The worksheet assesses a product across metrics like relative advantage, compatibility, complexity, trialability, and observability. It is also great in identifying where you need to focus to reduce barriers to adoption. For example, a high learning curve would require training to overcome.
We also identify and connect with those early adopters and innovators who we recognize by their inclination to embrace the new technologies.
Yeah, one of the most frequent questions we get asked is, how do you identify an innovator? You can tell a person is an innovator when they do not require any convincing on your part to try out new technologies. It doesn't matter how busy they are, they use their personal time to test technology. This is fun and meaningful to them. You can see a spark of joy in their eyes when you show them a product. In a practice group of 100 person, there will only be 2 innovators. Conversely, if you're getting responses like who else is using it, or we don't have time now, or we'll look at this once this project closes, you are speaking to either a pragmatist or a conservative, and you are wasting your time. You need to conserve energy and move on to the next person.
We acknowledge the value of early adopters and innovators and continually extend additional care and support to nurture those contributions. You need to be responsive and offer your early testers perfect service to ensure they adopt the product. You need to be attentive to their feedback, and it is also important to give them a voice in those product-related in the decision-making processes.
And once we have activated our innovators, in other words, our allies and change agents in the practice group, we should seek to leverage their influence in the organization to break into the mainstream. We need what we call a super spreading event. The way we structured that is we need a senior associate or a partner, essentially someone with influence from the practice group, walk their colleagues through their personal experience of using the platform. It works best if this is face-to-face, but we have seen it be effective on Zoom or Teams meetings. Attorneys from other offices that use the product are also very effective if you do not have a local user, as long as they are in the same practice group. One convinced person per office is more than enough for generating good adoption across the globe. You will see that the results from this will be very different than you or your team carrying out training sessions or other adoption efforts. You may have additional questions on why we focus only on innovators and early adopters. On that, we refer you to Jayam's slide here and her source material on the Legal Evolution blog. This explains why we target specific demographics at specific phases. And on how to assess your product, this is the worksheet we previously discussed to assess products' widespread adoption potential. This will be in the slide deck together with this resource as well. So what can you do differently tomorrow?
What can you do differently? What are the actionable steps and transformative strategies that you can embrace starting from tomorrow to enhance the outcomes, redefine your approach, and unlock those new possibilities? So target audience. Your current strategy may involve mass targeting, aiming to reach the wide audience in the hope that something resonates and gains traction. Hopefully tomorrow, you will focus only on the target practice groups and innovators within those practice groups. With your use cases, today, as all good technologies should do, you're looking at use cases and end user pain points. Tomorrow, you can add a product diffusion potential into your framework when improving adoption or considering onboarding a new product. Finally, putting all these learnings together, our recommended game plan for you is to target your innovators, creating those super spreading events and get your innovators talking to the rest of the practice group to make that peer-to-peer adoption recommendations.
Thank you very much for your time, and we are open to any questions you may have. Thanks.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much, Angela and Jem, for that. We'll have a couple of questions coming through. Please do put them into the chat. I can see a couple coming in, and then I'm sure your faces will come up in the spotlight in just a moment, but we'll get started now. You talked a few times in there about super spreading events after the last few years. I think it's been a pretty triggering phrase for a load of us. I'm glad to see it being reclaimed as a positive thing. I was wondering if you could give us a more sort of specific example of kind of a format or an event that you've run on a particular project that kind of acted as what you would describe as that super spreading event.
Yeah, absolutely. At Baker McKenzie, we have what we call practice group meetings. I'm sure other firms have similar events as well. This is could be a 2-day, 3-day event where, for example, all the tax attorneys from all across the EMEA region would come together at one location. And these events are great opportunities to push innovation, because these are usually the events where attorneys come together to both socialize, but also take stock of the year and think about what they can be doing better next year. So the last time we attended something like that, that was actually for our banking and finance practice group, and we wanted to introduce a specific product to them. I went on the stage, briefly talked about the product itself, just 2 minutes. Here's how you get to it, the cost or whatever associated with it. And then a senior associate walked on the stage. I didn't receive any questions. It was dead silent. And then he went on the stage and he explained his personal story about how it was very relevant to them. The client liked it. How did they get the client to use the product? Because it required a couple of different participants to actually use it effectively to get the best of it. And at the end of it, he just received a bunch of questions from the audience. Everybody came alive. Senior partners started asking questions about how it works, whether the client had any problems with it, whether they ran into any confidentiality issues, that sort of thing. And we started tracking that event. We almost like contract tracing, right? If we could match the adoption to that event, we started tracking those events, and by the end of the 6-month period, we were able to show causality that our usage and adoption has increased 400% based off of that single event. So that was, I believe, a very good best practice that we then generated and started using in different environments as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And I love all that the ideas around also finding those bright spots. The Skills Book Club last year, we did a book called Switch by Chip Heath, which talked a lot about those bright spots, i.e. focusing more of your energy on grabbing hold of the reasons why a certain cohort does engage and building on that, rather than worrying too much about why others haven't, which is just inverting it. Just building on that, and the question from the thread was, you talked about the tone from the top, which is very, very important, but then you have the kind of the middle management layer that's got very routine. And any tips on how to reduce the friction and as put it here, get them rowing in the same direction? So how do you, I guess, augment the tone that's being set from the top?
Yeah, so on that one, we actually have a very interesting, and I feel like it would be very different than what is the commonly accepted practice in the market. We tend to so when we are looking at law firms, we tend to think hierarchically, but actually it's just people. So if you look at information, diffusion of innovation and then network theory thoughts and then combine them, it means that if you surround a person with people who are using a specific adoption at around 40% of connections, that person will automatically flip to using that innovation without you having to do anything. So what that means is if a specific senior partner or whoever is giving you friction, you just ignore that person, try to focus on people who are engaging with you. You provide a hypercare to them, you make sure that they get the best service, and then they become your allies, your champions in the region. You might need to protect them a bit, but we tend to get that every now and then. And eventually you will slowly spread adoption throughout the whole office and then throughout the whole global organization. And eventually the partners who have been giving you issue will just start using it. So the best action is actually just ignoring it and focusing on where you can actually deliver impact.
Fantastic, brilliant. And I think we've got about 1 minute left, so I think the survey will come up in one moment. But just whilst we've got that and in preparation for the next one, Angela, well, the other question that came through is how you find or identify your innovators. Are they all self-selecting? They come forth, and you don't have to reach too far for them, or do you have to find those kind of quiet champions?
There's many ways in which we can identify that, and Jem has a kind of spidey sense of when you're on a call with anyone who are presenting new technologies, it's the ones who ask those extra questions. We also have events is like when we are asked to attend the practice group areas and we're kind of presenting our technologies, we get a kind of a sense from there also of who is that extra bit interested and who's using the technology. And who are the ones who are willing to kind of stand up and represent, share their use cases, share feedback on the products as well. So I think it's been years of being able to quickly identify, looking at who's new, who started in the firm, and then trying to arrange those calls to introduce ourselves, and then you get a quick sense of, yeah, you're this is great. We really want to work with you. So there's many different ways that we'll do that.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And that's a good point. Your stakeholder map isn't static because your cohort evolves over time. So you need to revisit that. Brilliant. Thank you, Jem. Thank you, Angela. Thank you both very much. I've been reminded, of course, that for the content sessions, the survey doesn't come up. So we're moving straight into our next session, which is robots and AI with the Office and Dragon and Deckert team. So please roll.
Hi, I'm Thor, the Associate Director of Innovation at Deckert.
And I'm Sam, Founder and CEO of Office and Dragons.
This session is about why robots and automations matter in a world where the narrative has been dominated by super powerful AI. You might think that with generative AI being all the hype, that automation solutions no longer matter, but it's quite the opposite. What we are going to see today is that AI actually supercharges the use of robots.
At Office and Dragons, our focus has historically been on automating the portion of document drafting that is tedious and yet requires a high level of accuracy. We started with the basics. You can either generate a lot of documents or you can update a lot of documents. That's where we started, and that remains the foundation of our platform.
Now, the key here is that it's very easy for our attorneys to get up to speed quickly. They're busy. They don't have time to learn a complex system. With O&D, we got traction immediately because it solved an existing problem in a very simple way. And simple adds up. Just to give you some numbers, we used O&D to draft over 40,000 documents across 1,000 different projects this past year. That's a lot of value that you are generating. Okay, so I'm going to show you how not to solve this. So we have our own custom drafting tool here at Deckert that we use that uses generative AI, and I can go in and I can say something like this. Based on the text provided, give me these resolutions, one for Sam, one for Thor, and one for Sally. Use December 5, 2012, where it says, in brackets, date. And then I can plug in the resolution. I can say resolved that the company authorized 100 Class A shares to person on the date of date as a result of their payment of $10,000 to the company. I can go in and I can say, draft this for me. Now, the difficulty with this is I don't know if it's actually correct. It's probably going to be correct, and maybe it's 99% chance correct. But you don't have that 100% certainty that you can often get with robots and automations where you know when you plug something in, it's going to do exactly what you want it to do. So we've got the resolutions here, but still I have to double check it. I might even need to redline it. So that's the difficulty of generative AI. So question to you, Sam, is there a way to get the best of both worlds, the automations and the Gen AI?
The key here is that we use the underlying automations that already exist, but we put Gen AI in front of it. This allows you to take a real-world scenario and use Gen AI to parse it into rules more efficiently. So let me give you an example. In Office and Dragons, you can add conditional logic to the documents you're generating with a simple no-code builder. But let's be real. Even with the friendliest no-code interface, this is still a barrier to automation because lawyers don't think in if-then blocks. Lawyers think in language. That's why we built our AI logic generator, which lets lawyers describe the automation they want in plain language, like they would to a colleague in a Teams chat, and the AI will build the logic for them. Let's take another example. With our mass editing workflow, you can make consistent changes instantly across a whole set of different transaction documents, like changing party names and closing dates. With Gen AI and O&D, rather than having to read through an email and figure out the instructions themselves, the lawyer can just paste that email into the prompt and the AI will generate the workflow for them.
Oh, hold on a minute, Sam. What if the AI makes a mistake?
That's okay, because the AI is just setting up the workflow for the lawyer, who retains full control over the process. Think of it like a spell check. You can always accept, ignore, or modify the suggestion.
But isn't there still a risk here? I mean, how do you know whether the documents that have been generated are what you want them to be?
So that's where the O&D receipt comes in. In every workflow, you set up your rule set, and at the end, you have a receipt of what the robot did. That way, anyone can verify what was done. You're always in full control. So Thor, what do you think? We titled the session Robots vs. AI. Who wins?
You know, I think robots win this one, with the caveat being that the AI made the robots even better at what they were already doing. And frankly, O&D is not the only vendor out there where we see this happening. You look at someone like UiPath, which is a leader in the RPA field. They just announced an autopilot for building robots. You use the AI to build the robot, but it's still the robot that does the work.
So Thor, are you saying job security for robots?
Well, robots won't be replaced by AI, but robots will be replaced by robots using AI. I think we know that.
Thank you, Thor. Thanks, Sam. Excellent double act there on the robots versus AI. I really enjoyed that session. I think it's a really interesting one because I remember 12 months ago, again at Skills, when we were in the earlier stages of Gen AI, and a lot of people were talking about using it for drafting. And indeed, there was a conversation in the break around when and when not you might need to disclose the fact that you've used it as part of your drafting process. And I think what you guys hit at really well there is, it's a tool, and how does this fit in? How do you play to the strengths of what it does versus playing to the strengths of a more predictable and structured and curated process? I was wondering if you could take me through where you think this will take us in kind of 3 or 5 years' time. I mean, Sam, your business has been pretty smart in how you've integrated these in, and thought you've come with him on that journey. Where do you think we'll be in 3 or 5 years' time in terms of producing documents and how we balance generative versus structured tools?
Or do you want to take that first, or should I?
You go first.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the way we see it, and I think this goes to a question in the chat, is that AI is drastically going to democratize the use of automation by lowering the skill and preparation barrier. And that certainly changes where you could or couldn't afford to use it. If you don't have to hire a specialist team and so on to automate a document, you can use it much more ubiquitously across your practices. I think one of the key things that's going to change from a product perspective is the focus is going to shift from what's the fastest way to draft a document, because as Thor showed, many fast ways to do that now with Gen AI, but it's what's the fastest and most accurate way to draft and review the document and get a proper work product out the door. And that's where a lot of the focus is going to shift from speed of doing something to how easy and accurate is it to review.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think, Thor, so you can add to that.
Yeah, I was going to say from the law firm perspective, I mean, if you don't adopt these tools, you're probably going to be toast in the near future. And I think you're going to see a dynamic where you have high-end firms that all of a sudden you can do this work really, really, really fast. And I think some are going to go to market and just say that to clients. And I think that's going to have a great acceleration effect on deals getting done in a better, faster, and hopefully more accurate way. And I think then the question is, firms with lower billing rates, how do you compete against that when historically your market pitch has been you can do it more efficiently? And I think we're going to see new dynamics there, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out on the global law firm level.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think the other point that you were bringing through there about UiPath, not them specifically, was a more general point. We've seen for the last 5-6 years a lot of talk around low code and then no code tools and varying degrees of success in that. Are you seeing this then as the next kind of paradigm? So if we can be completely conversational, we're not even looking at a visual metaphor for a code underneath it, that actually that's where we get genuinely zero and no code from a subject matter expert's perspective, being able to build systems using conversational interactions. Is that the point?
I think so. I think the ideal world is one where you don't need someone like me who helps attorneys with tech. Ideally, you have the attorney, they go to the tool and they use it the same way you can use an Apple product. You don't need a guide, you just turn it on and it works. And I think we're going to get there sooner than later. So as much as there's a big shift, I think attorneys are going to have to learn to use these tools, but it's going to get easier and easier and easier. And so there is a learning curve, but that learning curve is actually going to get smaller over time, the same way that the early computers that people had in the 90s took more learning than one that you could get today.
Fantastic. No, I definitely agree with that. And I guess the other question that just came through as our last question before we wrap up was, does better and faster also mean cheaper? Which I guess is a question about, is this how we transition around to more of a value-based pricing conversation? Is this part of that, that pivot?
I think it is, but in the better, faster, cheaper, the faster is always the biggest one we found. If you can get a deal done faster and legal costs are typically the smaller end of the deal, you're giving more value back to the business and they should value that. And so maybe it costs less, maybe it's more accurate, but the speed that you can give back, that's always the biggest one, especially in corporate and transactional work.
Fantastic. Sam, Thor, thank you guys very much. I think the session poll's just coming up, so we'll just give people a moment to vote on that. And in the meantime, thank you both very much for your session. Really, really appreciate it. We will go on now to our next session, which is APIs plus AI on a next-gen Dinger system that the Fisher Phillips team, Evan and Jennifer, have put together. So please roll the next tape.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evan Shankman, Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at Fisher Phillips.
And I'm Jennifer Mendez, Senior Director of Knowledge Management Innovation at Fisher Phillips.
So today we're here to talk about our firm's automated Dinger system. So as you all know, Dingers are really the lifeblood of a law firm. We need to let our attorneys know whenever their clients or prospects need help, whenever they've been subject to a lawsuit or something involving an agency. And we had a legacy Dinger system in place that located case filings. It was an opt-in system, and it would essentially require our library to scour those reports that came in each day, figure out which ones were firm clients or prospects, and then manually send an email out to the attorney in question or attorneys in question and let them know that their client might need some help. While it did an okay job, it was a really manual, time-intensive process and not one that anybody really enjoyed doing, not surprisingly. We knew that technology could help us with this, and we knew that we could build a better way to do it, and then we set about to do that.
Yeah, and so for us, the solution was really to partner with the folks at Outsource to develop a custom state-of-the-art alert system that would notify attorneys whenever their clients were subject to any of the things Evan mentioned previously, so that we can go ahead and hopefully offer our help and win that new business. The result has been a custom system tailored specifically to meet our needs that imports case alerts from Courthouse News's case portal API and a number of publicly available APIs from the DOL's website and other government agencies. We execute those imports twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon, so that we can stay up to date on the latest happenings in all of those areas. And then we consolidate all that information into a single table. So the format is consistent across the board so that we can deliver that information in an easily digestible email, which we'll show you in just a second. There is still a little bit of a manual process because the system is not foolproof. We are using Elastic's search index to search through all of the defendant names. We're also leveraging IBM Watson's natural language understanding capabilities to identify the company and individual names from the defendant list or the equivalent of the defendant list if it's not a court filing. And we go through that process to make sure that we're getting the latest hits. Anything that is scored at an 85% confidence factor or higher is automatically included in an email to the originating attorney. But anything below that, we actually review. We don't really review anything below 65 in terms of confidence factor, but anything between 65 and 84 is manually reviewed. And we go through the process of indicating whether or not it should have been a match. With the IBM Watson's capabilities, the system then learns to identify that as a good hit going forward. We also have the ability to exclude hits, to say we don't want these types of cases. As a labor and employment firm, we don't want specific types of cases included. They're not relevant to our business. So the system learns what keywords we want in those summaries, as well as what we expect to see from the defendant and our client list match. And not just our client list, because we're also looking at prospects. So we have a separate target list that's manually maintained to make sure that we're also being alerted about anything going on with our prospects. And that then results in the email that you see here. This email goes out, like I said before, twice a day. So in the morning and in the afternoon, all times Eastern, to inform our attorneys of those things that are happening. And beyond that, it gives us an opportunity to really demonstrate some of our capabilities or remind firm attorneys of the things that they should be doing or thinking about when trying to win new business. So I won't go through each of these columns here, but you can see that you can take a lot of action right from the alert, right? So you have information about the status of the client, the last time we handled a matter for them, the other attorneys that are receiving the alerts, so that we're not duplicating efforts and we're making sure we're coordinating as a team, the ability to request a conflict check or litigation analytics if it's a court case, the ability to request assistance from our RFP and pitch team if it's something that we want to pitch to the client. So there's a lot of action that you can take there, and it allows us to promote some of the resources that we know can come in really handy for our attorneys.
All right, so the good news is it really has been a great success. We ran it in parallel with our legacy system for a period of time, and it literally brought in hundreds of new matters which were not caught with our legacy process that were caught with our new automated system for obvious, easy to prove instant ROI for this project. It's also freed up our library's time to do much more rewarding, higher value work in their day. And it also pushes that underutilized but really valuable content to our attorneys automatically in that email, so they don't even need to think where to go to start the ball rolling to try to help out our clients. From our perspective, it's really just the perfect marriage of APIs and AI, smart people like Jen and Stacy, a vendor willing to push the envelope like an outsource, and our library, really all working together to successfully modernize the really critical Dinger process at our busy law firm. So now we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Evan, hi there. Thank you very much. And Jennifer, hopefully will come up in the spotlight in a minute as well with you. Thanks very much for that session. A really, really great presentation. There are a few things that really jumped out at me, and I've got a couple of great questions coming in the chat as well. You talked about the 85% confidence score and the 65%, and that relates to a session earlier as well, thinking about when you have a sort of manual intervention or an oversight. I'd be really interested how you came to those numbers, what your process was for figuring out, okay, this is a threshold that we don't need to overlook, or this is one where we're going to sense check it.
Yeah, so before rolling it out firm-wide, we sat with the data for quite a bit and did an analysis of all of the hits and the confidence factor. We came to the determination based on just a bunch of data, quite frankly, over a period of weeks, where we said, if we sort of ignore anything below 65, it's unlikely that we're going to miss anything significant. There is obviously always the potential that you miss something here or there, but in terms of the ROI of not investing a ton of time on sort of lower confidence hits, we think that's a better use of our people's time.
Fantastic. And you mentioned a little bit, but it's coming up in the chat. How are you tracking that the Dinger system translates into and converts into Matters One? Are you going through following up with attorneys? How do you track that through?
We have our
sorry, go ahead, David.
Sure. We have our library always looking into new business that comes in and keeping track of these things. So we just now have a new column in the dashboard of would it have been in the old, or was it in the old legacy system? And if not, then we know that it was found because of our new legacy system. So that's a way that we've been able to keep track.
Fantastic. A couple of other questions that were coming through. So have you considered using the system for tracking legislation as well? I presume it would be very different connectivity, but I can map the question and the idea, giving just in time to people.
Not for our purposes. I mean, it's really for business development. Obviously, there's value in tracking legislative updates, but there are systems already built to do that. Whether it's GovHawk or Statescape or StateNet, we're not trying to recreate something that's already been done. For us, it's really about a business development opportunity.
Yeah, and I think I've got time for one last question, probably. I've got a question that came through from a research analyst, Jason, so asking an excellent research analyst question, which is whether you've put dashboards on top of the data or finding it a way to do sort of trend analysis, trend tracking. Is that something you've done or that you can see potential to do in the future?
We're looking at doing that now. We have been collecting all the data, but we haven't actually created dashboards for it. As Evan mentioned, we're obviously tracking whether or not we get the new business, but we'd like to automate the reports so that we don't have to go through a manual process going forward.
Fantastic, and I've got time for one last question as the votes come up shortly. A question came through from Beth Kellerman, was whether you can customize the messages for key high volume clients to make the messaging more personable. So that sounds like an extension of where you're at. Is that something you've thought about?
And these messages, you can jump in and I'll say one thing also.
Yeah, the alerts aren't going directly to clients, Beth. They're being sent out to our attorneys. The expectation is that our attorneys will reach out with a personalized message to the client when they learn about the matter.
Right, and we do have some customized messages that go out to certain other distribution lists. For instance, practice groups have separate systems that we've set up using our same automated dinger, but we have messages that are customized for those audiences as well. But this is exclusively an internal product that we've built for now.
That's fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you guys so much for your time, for the questions. Pick up the rest, including Patrick's. You can pick up Patrick's question in the chat. Thank you so much for your time today. And we'll roll straight into our next session, which is Unlocking Success, how Burgess Salmon revamp their knowledge management system. So please bring up the video.
So we looked at the user side first, then we looked at the technology side, and we did some benchmarking as usual. And it was actually really pleasing that the iManage system met practically all of our requirements. So for our users, a knowledge management system that looks and feels the same, that sits together with iManage quite well, we just knew it was going to be easier for people to start to use it with confidence without a lot of training. So we tried to think very hard about our stakeholders. Now, stakeholders in terms of users are primarily the legal teams, but not exclusively, and we knew that the content was therefore primarily legal and regulatory content.
Well, we scoped out the project largely through discovery sessions with a number of users. Didn't want to just focus on knowledge teams or on the project team itself, but trying to talk to the wide variety of people so that we could meet the needs of the entire firm.
Then we started to talk to IT. And an equally rigorous approach was taken to defining the IT specification. So yes, I think it was a fairly robust exercise in terms of scoping and drawing together those requirements. And I think that was important because anyone's head can be turned by a glossy system, but it's got to be one that actually works for the firm. And we were confident that the one we chose would.
One of the main things that we spend time looking at is the metadata. The metadata is really, really important to get right because it is one of the main ways lawyers are discovering their content.
So strategy around content is incredibly important, and it will vary from area to area. So in some transactional areas, for example, corporate and real estate, you'll be looking mainly at precedents. So you're looking at a template-based approach and making sure that those templates and precedents are as effective and well annotated as you possibly can, with plenty of metadata around them. At the same time, people look quite hard at know-how. Now, for us, know-how is an example. It's an example of where you might have used a precedent for a particular situation that's had a particular feature. So our business researchers produce a lot of client profiles, sector profiles, profiles of particular developments in different areas. Now, those are high-value reports. They use the subscription tools we have incredibly effectively, but they also draw down what the legal teams know. I would say, though, the most significant area of content development is around our sector knowledge and expertise. Now, a lot of that is nowhere in the published resources. It's not even touched on. So actually having easy access to the last major piece of renewables work that we did, that's really valuable to people. And it saves the partner time for having to answer repeat questions and download the same information to multiple different people. So we spoke to the PSLs right at the outset of the project to think about adoption, We know that change is incredibly important with our very busy lawyers, and we wanted to ensure that we had excellent adoption right from the outset. So we consulted with the PSLs. So having familiar artifacts in place, such as the landing pages that they all know and love, that was the #1 feature that the professional support lawyers wanted to see. So we were then able to unpack the significant improvements that iManage had made to a knowledge management system to show them how they could browse, how they could search, browse and search. It's a bit like online shopping, people got it quite quickly, but we did need to think quite hard about giving them a familiar starting point. The outcome and feedback right from go live has been positive. We had a lot of engagement really from the outset. People liked what they saw. We used the branding quite extensively in our communication so that people became familiar with it. From the outset, we asked people to give us questions, give us glitches, anything that they couldn't do easily, we turned into an FAQ. Now, you won't be surprised to hear we had to do something a little more robust than just talk to people. So we took 7 or 8 factors from our business case and we fed back to the board on how things were going. So a couple of those were the number of submissions that we were receiving, obviously the amount of usage we were seeing on the system, people's content, what were we seeing, which teams were using it most, and being able to produce quarterly reports on usage and submissions to share with the PSLs and their KML&D partners. That means that quarterly they can sit down in their own areas, look at the usage, look at any gaps, because we've been able to use Power BI across the iManage data to look for things like searches that have produced no results. Well, that's brilliant because that shows you what people want to find and haven't found. I think we all saw a real hype cycle around about April, May time when, frankly, it was going to change the world. And I still believe it's going to have a transformational impact, although not sure what the timescales are. But my personal view around generative AI and knowledge management is it gives us real opportunities. So I think it will become easier to get to a vanilla level starting point in terms of understanding what the law is in a given area. The thing that ends up differentiating us then is the knowledge that isn't contained in that published content. It's the wisdom, the expertise, the experience that we have that's actually manifested in our curated internal collections. It's what they know, it's that tacit knowledge, that 40%. And I think that Knowledge Unlock will help people to have discussions around documents that will unlock some of that tacit knowledge.
I think it's really important that curated knowledge is a place where we can ground things. So not just on the actual content itself and to be able to say where things were generated from, but also the context provided by the projects, that are around things like metadata, adding context, taxonomies, etc. So having this great asset and the context that comes around this asset, around these projects that Matt and Jack and Carol have delivered around their know-how, will mean that in future lawyers will be able to ask questions in all different environments. I see a lot of these projects as very foundational now, as well as being hugely useful to lawyers to use this know-how and precedents. But I see this as foundational in how we'll start to ground generative AI in the future.
Our investments in Knowledge Unlocked, in our curated content, and in all of the metadata work we've done to make it really easy to find. Yeah, I think that's a good investment. It's looking good in the face of Gen AI.
Hi, Carol. Thank you very much for that. And I love the background. You've gone for a sunny San Francisco off the back of the wonderful...
I better change it. Wasn't good, was it?
But thank you for a really excellent video there and some great points to draw out from it. The first question that I've got from the chat that relates to a few bits that I was thinking I want to pick up is asking about how much work went into cleaning up your data on the DMS before rolling it out. And maybe you could give a kind of a broader view on the conversation around being able to apply AI across all of the work product and find hidden gems versus a curated knowledge bank. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So in terms of cleanup, we had 4 out of our 13 professional support lawyers on the project, and they did a really, really thorough cleanup. So when their content was moved across, and they'd been collecting content on our previous system since 2007, so there was quite a bit. It was really good. And they'd done a lot of work on metadata with iManage's help. With the rest of the PSLs, some of them did some cleansing, some data cleansing, a lot of them really took their time to realize what the benefits would be. They had to see the four that had done it. They had to see the success and the usage figures, and then they got stuck in. So some of it was before we moved across and some of it was afterwards, but pretty much everyone's cleaned up their data now, and the content's looking really good. Yeah.
And can I ask, as we're following up on that, is that cleaning in terms of clearing out old, less relevant stuff, or is it enriching by way of adding some contextual metadata and other attributes around it that was lacking?
Yeah. So we had quite a lot of metadata already, so iManage were able to use that. So we weren't starting from scratch at all. But actually, they brought us some really good advice on how to avoid lots of categorizations. For example, training. You don't need a training heading under every subject matter heading, do you? So they taught us how to slice and dice the content in a taxonomy more effectively than we were doing already. And it reduced the size of the taxonomy, so much easier to browse and navigate. So that really helped. And then, Nick, you asked me another question, which is about using what we've got to go fishing for more content. Actually, do you know what? That's probably the most exciting bit. So the collection we've got at the moment, so tens of thousands, I'd say, probably going to go to hundreds in due course. I'll explain why I think that is. But actually what you might be able to do, and Alex will probably haul me back on this because I'll get too excited, is you might be able to profile what we've got and understand what makes a good piece of know-how in a given area. So for example, a share purchase agreement, if I look at the 25 we've got already, what characteristics can we see from the metadata that would enable a bot to go and crawl 50 million documents in the document management system and bring back similar examples? I'm absolutely sure that's got to be possible at some stage. Perhaps not today.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I mean, Alex, you were speaking a little bit of sort of to that point in the video, talking about some of the knowledge investments grounding and metadata attributes grounding in projects for the future, and particularly around Gen AI. I wondered if you wanted to build on that point a little bit. We had some questions about next steps and future ambitions that might partly pick up.
I think there was a couple of things Carol mentioned, like, we did help simplify some of the taxonomies and almost make those, I say taxonomies deliberately because we tried to make things more semantic. So, there are definitely individualized fields as opposed to one big taxonomy. So, that obviously helps, search, browse, all the things that we talked about in the video. But when we start to look at how we might start to ask questions of these data sets, they're going to become very, very important to add context, narrow, and make sure that you are generating things off very, very clear sets. So, having things like a jurisdiction field is going to become very important when you then decide to potentially look at asking questions or comparing. You're going to want to be really clear it's that jurisdiction, not another one.
And when working on that part of it, is that presumably there's an element of kind of cross-functional working across all of that? I mean, Carol, with kind of the BD team and how they would look at it and the sort of lens and taxonomy that they would apply from the perspective of the role that they perform?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do use the system to give them a lawyer interface. The system's essentially for the legal teams, but anyone can provide content for them. It's mainly legal and regulatory, but there's a lot of kind of pitch, drafting and advice and tips and tricks. And we've got all of our client business intelligence in there as well. So we've got an internal team that do reports for key clients and others. Those are all shared through that route as well. So yes, it's a really useful interface for the marketing and BD team too.
Fantastic. We've got 2 or 3 more minutes. One question I wanted to ask around you were making some really interesting points, Carol, around the look and feel and actually how familiar this was part of the successful adoption. But of course, you're trying to achieve different things with it as well. I'm wondering if you've got any thoughts on, and Alex as well, yourself, on the balance between giving something that's familiar and comfortable versus having to encourage some change and some learning to achieve kind of something that's better or to achieve different goals.
So I think everybody's busy. Lots of people have said how busy the lawyers are, and you've really got to make some sense of taking their time. So the first thing we did, and we learned a lot of lessons from the first system we put in 2007-8, was to try and use the firm's existing comms streams and meetings that the lawyers were already having. So any comms we needed to do around this change, we went through those streams. So we took no extra time at all. And we made sure that it was really tailored to what they wanted to talk about, a particular legal development, a particularly useful precedent. So that seemed to work really, really well with them. In terms of the look and feel, we did minimal training, really minimal training. So the professional support lawyers rolled out the system to their teams, and we had a lot of very good guides on our learning management system. So when you want help, you can go there, run a video, see the FAQs at any time. So it's point of need. So yeah, that was slightly less big bang than our first knowledge management system, which honestly, I mean, you would have thought we'd changed the world. We took so much time and everyone was exhausted by the time we'd finished rollout. Nobody had time to think about actually, how do I get value now? Whereas I think we've been told it's a much lighter touch landing and people have really liked that. And the usage figures would suggest we're still getting a huge amount of extra usage and benefit, even though we haven't gone really big bang this time.
Yeah, fantastic. A question that maybe for Alex, but for both of you, there's been a few conversations today that have picked up on this point around the ability to use some of the new technologies as a way to augment the application of a taxonomy to apply that. So the question was whether you've thought about that, and I know that you have. I wonder if perhaps you'd like to elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way I look at this is we've kind of laid plumbing, and the plumbing's kind of like the processes for turning items into knowledge, whatever that may be, whether it's examples or creating templates and all of those things. I think what we can start to do is look at, as certain context fields become more available through these tools and they get proven out, etc., you can start to suggest those, but there's still the human in the loop of those. So the one that always comes to me is summaries. You know, mini summaries are amazing for findability. They're amazing for context. They're amazing for, you know, kind of just, you know, giving their lawyer the view of what is this document before I use it. We can start to do some of that, but we've already got the plumbing in to now make that maybe potentially suggestive. So, you know, Carol's team could then have a suggestion, and then they're not starting from a blank sheet of paper, as everyone likes to say at the moment. So as capabilities come online to the quality that we need, they start to become available within there. But we built the plumbing. The plumbing's kind of there.
This is just the start. This really is just the start. So tacit knowledge sharing, we haven't even talked about today, but I manage looking at an expertise locator that we're hoping to kind of include alongside what we're doing with documents and so on. But I think the biggest change from generative AI is if people can get to a vanilla level starting point sooner, and we can all do that if we can afford the publisher's costs, then it's going to come a time where our knowledge and expertise internally is our sole differentiator. And that's going to make those knowledge collections even more important. So we think it's a good area for investment.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with that point and echo that. What we know internally, and if only we knew what we knew, and all of that, that's fundamentally the heart of what we are as a knowledge business. Brilliant. Thank you both so much, and thanks for a great presentation. And we'll have the poll coming up in just a moment. The last session from this section, which is harnessing AI for enhanced experience data collection. If you'll please roll the video.
Hello to everyone at the Skills Conference. I'm Sean Monahan, leading the data modernization team at Harbor. Joining me are Sarah Happy, senior manager on our team, and Christina Bakardiev from Cozen O'Connor, where she's the director of innovation. We're here to share insights and experiences in harnessing AI, particularly GPT-based AI, for legal applications.
The realm of AI, especially GPT, is often surrounded by a blend of excitement and skepticism. Our endeavor aimed to cut through the noise and apply AI in a way that's both practical and impactful. As we embarked on this venture, we identified 3 key problems.
Our first challenge was client industry identification. In the legal realm, understanding a client's industry is fundamental. It influences case strategy, compliance requirements, and more.
And applying NAICS codes manually is a labor-intensive process that requires extensive knowledge of both the client's business and the intricate NAICS classification system. The difficulty lies in accurately categorizing a client who may operate across multiple industries or whose primary industry isn't clearly defined. The task is further complicated by the evolving nature of businesses. The second problem was matter industry analysis. It's essential to understand not just their client's industry, but also the industries of other parties involved in legal matters. We aim to test whether GPT could handle this complexity and use reasoning to determine each matter's industry dynamics.
The final hurdle was classifying party entity types. This involves categorizing various entities, like companies and individuals, and managing the associated metadata.
We approach this challenge by breaking it down into 3 distinct parts, each escalating in complexity and sophistication. Our journey started with a simple, cost-effective approach using the basic capabilities of ChatGPT. This initial phase was about exploring what's readily achievable with the standard tools at our disposal. I will also note we only tested with publicly available data, never exposing confidential data to any of the models we tested.
So building on that, we moved to the next level. Here we utilize the new tools rolled out by OpenAI, creating our own customized GPT model. This phase represented a balance between the low cost and enhanced capability, providing a deeper dive into AI's potential.
Finally, we ventured into a full-scale approach. This involved harnessing the full power of AI in a more flexible environment like Azure with OpenAI. This stage was about pushing the boundaries and seeing the full extent of what GPT could achieve when connected to workflows and orchestration.
To effectively address these challenges, we concentrated on 5 key areas of focus with GPT AI. The first area was the selection of the model version. Different versions of GPT come with varying capabilities.
Our second area of focus was context provision, coupled with integrating real-time data from the internet.
And the third area of focus was the use of governed lists to ensure accurate responses from the AI model. A key challenge we faced was getting the AI to use the most current information, such as the 2022 NAICS codes, instead of outdated versions like the 2017 codes.
The fourth area was the output format and usability. We worked on configuring the AI to produce outputs in formats like CSV.
Lastly, we focused on scalability and robustness. Law firms handle vast amounts of data, so it was crucial that our AI solutions could scale up to meet these demands. One of the clear successes was the adaptability of GPT and client industry identification. Even basic ChatGPT, with minimal context, could accurately identify client industries from publicly available data.
But even more exciting was the matter industry analysis. By providing detailed context, the AI could analyze complex matter dynamics.
In terms of scalability, we were able to take the key steps from the more chat-based GPT tools and get the same results in an Azure environment. We could see the system applying the NAICS codes to all the parties in a litigation and predicting the proper matter industry.
However, there were challenges. Basic ChatGPT struggled with more complex concepts, lacks context for entities, and didn't have any of the plugins that provided the necessary context.
One key learning was the importance of model selection. Each problem requires a careful consideration of which GPT model to use, balancing accessibility and complexity.
We also learned the significance of context. Forcing the GPT to answer only in the terms you want returned was crucial to avoid hallucinations.
Another learning was about the balance between AI capabilities and human oversight. AI can provide powerful insights, but it requires guidance and verification.
We're excited about the future possibilities and look forward to scaling these solutions.
Before we close, we'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Joanna Wozniak and Nathan Castle for their amazing contributions to this project. Their expertise and dedication were instrumental in this success.
Thank you all for your time and interest. We are enthusiastic about continuing this work and sharing more advancements with you in the future.
Sean, Christina, thank you both very much for that video, and Sarah unfortunately can't join us as well, but thank you for her contribution to it as well. It was a great video, and as we were saying in the previous session, the ability to use these tools to apply metadata or to apply context or summarization against work product and knowledge assets is such an exciting space. You were referring to the NAICS codes. As a Brit, I've learned what those are, but you were talking about the challenges of grounding the model in applying the most up-to-date. So I'm sort of inferring for that, but would be interested to know, were you using a reference database that stored those codes or something like that? Or were you relying on the LLM to use its own kind of general semantic understanding to infer what you meant when you said you wanted to apply those codes and for it to retrieve them. Is that what we were dealing with?
Yeah, absolutely. So what really sort of the approach we took was to test how low code we could go with this solution and how advanced in the AI sort of stack we had to be. And so it became pretty clear that we needed to use a GPT that allowed you to feed it a governed set of information. And so we actually fed it a spreadsheet, basically. The sort of initial plan was a spreadsheet with all the current NAICS codes. And so then basically we said, you're not allowed to answer the NAICS code unless it's on this list. When we didn't do that, it was guessing the 2017 code, sometimes the 2022 code. So just having the ability to make sure that there's sort of that context to be able to respond was super critical. And so basically we sort of said, you got to get to at least the next level of GPT to be able to do this. But then once you were able to bring it into Azure, then you can kind of have a lot more tools in your toolkit.
Fantastic, thank you. And you also made some references to human oversight, and that ties in a little bit with the Field Fisher team and what they did with their Dinger system. I was wondering if you had any kind of approach to thresholding or having a confidence score or any other decision to have a human intervention, or is it a kind of a QA thing that you do across each process just to really safeguard?
Every time we've done these types of things, we always want to make sure, at least, I mean, we're so early in these days that basically I would advocate that there always needs to be a human threshold for review at the early stages of these efforts. I think that until you can start kind of getting multiple iterations, maybe 3 or 4 kind of revs of training, reviewing the results, kind of comparing them against gold standards, and I mean that over like months and months of data, properly seeing what the results are coming out, you really can't take the human out of it. But we do sort of see this as that sort of in the vein of human augmented toolkit, which I think is really powerful in this type of thing. Oh, Christina,
sorry, I think you had a point there. You're on mute.
I was just going to add that what we're noticing as development is accelerating as well is that if we're not constantly in contact, we're not up to date on how it's behaving. And so that's something else that we're learning through this process, is that it's evolving. And so we have to evolve kind of at the same rate. So it's important to engage now and to see its development.
No, I'd love to, entirely right. I'd love to build on that a little bit, because I think one of the challenges that a lot of us faced last year especially was the intense pace of change, not just in the models themselves. They'll continue to reiterate and all sorts of promises about what GPT-5 will do and all the rest of it, but also in the associated infrastructure. I know a lot of folks who have made investments in infrastructure that then became redundant because the tooling improved. And I liked what you did in your slide in talking about how you think about when to use free GPTs, when and where that's safe and appropriate versus internal dev. I was wondering how you guys think through building a long-term strategy for how you build in such an unsettled and volatile environment.
Do you want me to take that one, Sean? So we've relied heavily on Sean and his team at Harvard to build that strategy, to be honest, at least here at Coase O'Connor. And it's a long-term strategy that is a hybrid of using both publicly available tools and enterprise-ready tools that have been fine-tuned for the legal profession. And along those lines, we really believe that by engaging in both sets of tools with the appropriate tasks, that we're building skill sets, not just for our lawyers and the admin staff, but also for our clients. So we've already started a client innovation lab that is basically a workshop that works side by side with lawyers, so we can capture expectations at the same time as we are making them aware of technologies. Development is at such a rapid pace that it's very hard for any individual to stay up to speed without access to the best information, the latest information that's curated. And so we've started that conversation. We really believe it's a partnership. It's a partnership between our lawyers and the clients, and it's going to evolve. It's a dynamic relationship, and you can't just expect that at some point in time, we're going to have an end product that we can deliver and say, hands off, here you go. I think it's part of the relationship we're building now, both to capture their expectations and to educate everyone involved on where we are in development and how to best use these tools.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you both very much. There's some great questions in the chat that I'm afraid I've run out of time for, but please do, if you can, stick around and answer those about how you apply the taxonomies and single or multiple labeling and things. Please do grab those. But for now, we'll move to the poll very quickly, and this is a very important poll because it's the last one of the day, and so we're just going to be wrapping up for this session now. And but for everybody that's been joining on the YouTube live stream, we're about to conclude the showcase for today, and thank you all very much for attending.